Blissful Bookshelf. Chapter 260. Thankfully, Feng Yan's saber was only of common grade. Otherwise, as long as it reached the level of a level 1 spirit tool, it would not need to be branded with any martial art intent. Merely its sharpness would be enough to cut Ling Han's sword in half. Great Sun Mad Saber, shatter! Feng Yan shouted loudly, and charged with the saber. Saber light flashed, creating waves after waves, its might extremely terrifying. Such strong saber intent! Xia Chang exclaimed. At this time, the spiritual infant tier decree had already been put away, and everyone naturally climbed up from the ground to watch the battle between these two young prodigies. However, some people's gazes swept over Hunyou and Yan Tianzhao, because these two people were actually able to resist the spiritual infant tier aura emanating from the decree, which was truly shocking and unexpected. Xia Chang was known as the Overlord Saber, and his attainments in saber arts could be considered one of the best in Rain Country. Even he had to exclaim in surprise, so it was clear that Feng Yan's saber arts were indeed extraordinary. Many people nodded one after another. Whether they liked Feng Yan as a person or not was one thing, but if they were to look at the matter as it stood, Feng Yan's attainments in saber techniques were indeed extraordinary. Otherwise, how could the third imperial prince, Zhao Huan, and Can Yi have been so easily defeated by him? Ling Han was also slightly surprised. The might of this saber had reached the level of a black-grade high-level martial arts technique. The Feng clan could not produce a black-grade martial arts technique at all. In the whole of Rain Country, probably only the imperial family possessed a black-grade high-level martial arts technique. Feng Yan naturally could not have obtained such a secret technique from the imperial family, so he must have been taught it when he went to the Winter Moon sect. Not bad, no wonder he could gain the favor of a powerful warrior of spiritual infant tier. Feng Yan had probably only cultivated this saber art for about a month, yet he had already practiced it to a very familiar level, and had at least grasped 20 to 30% of its essence. It could be seen that his talent in martial art was indeed extraordinary. But it was only extraordinary. Ling Han gave a long shout, and brandished his sword. The Four Seasons sword technique was activated, and he charged towards Feng Yan. This set of sword technique was passed on to Lu Yutong by him. It was also a martial technique that he had used in his previous life. There was no need to practice at all. With just a thought, it would naturally and smoothly circulate. It was a hazy drizzle, like the continuous spring rain. This drizzle was formed from Ling Han's elemental energy. As long as it stuck to his body, the elemental energy would enter his body and cause terrifying damage. Good sword. When it came to Ling Han's sword, many people also praised it. In the world of martial art, the sword and the saber were the two most commonly used weapons. Feng Yan's saber techniques had attracted the admiration of saber users, while Ling Han's sword techniques had obtained the praise of swordsmen. This young man's sword intent is not inferior to Feng Yan's. That's right. Honestly speaking, if I suppress my cultivation level to gushing spring tier, I might not be able to unleash such a strong sword technique. Strange, why do I have a feeling that this sword isn't done yet and that it's still holding back? You think so too? Feng Yan let out a long howl, and had already swung his saber. Ding! A crisp sound rang out, creating a ripple of sound that spread out in all directions. All the martial artists below gushing spring tier all bled from their ears, nose, and eyes, looking extremely wretched. Even for those in gushing spring tier, there were still many who involuntarily covered their ears. Blissful Bookshelf. Ling Han and Feng Yan were both forced back. In this exchange, they were evenly matched, and it was difficult to determine who was stronger. I've underestimated you a little. Feng Yan humphed coldly. He swung his saber in a circle, creating a piercingly cold flash of saber light that surged like a waterfall. Saber roll 30,000 feet, slaying all enemies in the world. Xia Chang's hand trembled, and he could not help but touch the hilt of his saber. His eyes shone with fighting spirit. This kind of saber intent made him itch to fight, and he could not help but want to battle. That strike just now was actually not his full power. Heavens, he's already so strong, and he can still improve further. This is too terrifying. This time, Ling Han can only retreat, right? In the midst of everyone's exclamations of shock, Ling Han's sword swept out, and the spring rain appeared again. But in an instant, the concept of the sword technique changed, from the endless spring rain to the sudden clap of thunder in summer. Hong long long, the sound of thunder did not stop, and it was deafening. What? Everyone was stunned. Consecutive sword strikes. How is this possible? The first strike has not even finished, and he can already unleash a new strike. And this sword intent changes so naturally, as if it makes one feel as if spring has come to summer, complying with the laws of nature. No wonder that strike just now gave me the feeling that it had not been fully unleashed. So the sword intent is continuous, and it has not been used up at all. This is too terrifying. How does this guy cultivate? But that was it. Ling Han's sword intent changed again, and the autumn wind blew. It was slightly bleak, and filled with killing intent. Then, with another turn, it became winter. Endless white snow fluttered in the air, causing everyone to involuntarily wrap their arms around themselves, feeling a chill. One strike, 4 types of sword intent. Oh my god, this is too freakish. How is this possible? Everyone was dumbfounded. This was completely beyond the scope of their understanding. Such a sword technique should not have appeared in the mortal world at all. Ling Han revealed a faint smile. The 4 seasons sword technique as one was already close to an earth-grade martial technique's power. If he did not have a trace of the divine sense of the heaven tier, he would not have been able to transform the sword technique so smoothly. And once there was a delay, then there would be a gap in the 4 seasons, and the power would not be as good as the first season sword technique. Spring rain, summer thunder, autumn wind, winter snow, Ling Han rode on the 4 types of sword intent and attacked Feng Yan mightily. Feng Yan's expression changed drastically. If Ling Han had only used the first season sword technique, he would have been completely unafraid, and he could even use the tyranny of his blade technique to suppress it. But the 4 seasons sword technique as one, it formed an effect that was greater than 1 + 1. This was a sword formation, equivalent to 4 people working together. No matter how strong he was, could he fight against 4 Ling Hans at the same time? He roared angrily, and the long saber sank downwards, stopping its forward momentum. His right foot suddenly stomped on the ground, forcing his body to retreat. Hong, the sword's shadows surged, but missed, only slicing the nearby tables and chairs into pieces that danced in the air. Hu, Feng Yan panted heavily. He had forcefully stopped his attack just now, which was equivalent to hitting himself, and it was extremely uncomfortable. He hurriedly swallowed a medicinal pill, his gaze fixed on Ling Han, revealing a strong expression of wariness. He could tell that one strike from Ling Han contained 4 sets of sword techniques and 4 types of sword intent. If it was just any one of them, he would not be the slightest bit afraid, but the combined might of the 4 seasons was too great, and even he did not dare to take it head-on. Damn! Originally, he could have crushed Ling Han to death with a raise of his hand, but at that time, he had not obtained the approval of the Winter Moon sect, so he was slightly cautious in his actions, and wanted to take Ling Han's life 3 months later. He did not think that a momentary slip would actually cause his younger brother to die at the hands of Ling Han, and now he even had the ability to stand against him. This brat had grown too quickly, hadn't he? Kill him, he had to kill him. Feng Yan once again drew out the decree, and with a schwa, he unfurled it. A powerful pressure swept over, and everyone once again knelt on the ground, or sat on the ground, all of them lowering themselves. Die! Feng Yan used the decree as a whip, and lashed it at Ling Han. There were multiple characters flashing on the front, and it was indescribably awe-inspiring. Chapter 261. Ling Han was not afraid of the might of a spiritual infant tier elite, but if he was struck by the will of a spiritual infant tier martial art, it would be equivalent to smashing an egg against a rock. He would only be smashed to pieces. Thus, when the decree swept towards him, he could only retreat. Run, run, where can you run to? Feng Yan smirked coldly, waving the decree as he chased after him. As he danced, the might of a spiritual infant tier elite became more and more terrifying. Even a spiritual pedestal tier elite was sweating profusely, not to mention the others, who had long since become soft mud. Ling Han's figure dashed as he pondered for a countermeasure. If he drew out the demon birth sword, even if he could not activate the will of a martial art on the sword, he would be able to block the will of a spiritual infant tier martial art with mere level 10 forging materials. More importantly, if he used it in public, how much attention would he attract? If he was all alone, then it didn't matter. At worst, he could just run and continue to mingle in another place. But now, his roots were in Rain Country, in Deyuan City, in Grey Cloud Town. He could leave, but what about Ling Dongxing, and what about his other relatives? The Ling family had already suffered a great calamity, and how could Ling Han bear to bring another calamity to the Ling family because of him? No, the demon birth sword definitely could not be used. Ha 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 ha, under the decree of a spiritual infant tier elite, how long do you plan to run? Feng Yan laughed loudly. His master had given him a decree, so he would have no fear even if he were to face the current Rain Emperor, what more a mere gushing spring tear. Obediently accept your death, don't even think about getting lucky. Ling Han used Shadow Wind Movement technique, which was also a black-grade high-level martial arts technique. Since he had broken through to gushing spring tier, the yellow-grade martial arts technique from before was naturally discarded, and switched for a higher-level black-grade martial arts technique. Feng Yan could not catch up. He had been taught a black-grade high-level saber technique, and he hadn't been able to fully grasp it even after more than a month, so where would he have the time to learn other martial arts techniques? Ling Han was different. He had used all of these in his previous life, and even if he hadn't, with his comprehension of martial art at the heaven tier, it would still be easy for him to learn them. Don't run. Feng Yan was furious, but there was nothing he could do to Ling Han. The other was as nimble as a loach, incredibly slippery, and he could not hit him at all. However, Ling Han smiled faintly and said, once the decree is activated, the will of martial art within it will dissipate. Now that you're activating it like this, you're speeding up the speed of its dissipation. How long can you last? When it came to understanding the secrets of martial art, who could compare to him, a former celestial being? How did you know? As expected, Feng Yan was greatly shocked. This was also what his master had told him. Dermic decrees could not be compared to spirit tools. They were only slightly more durable than spirit talismans, but there was still a limit. You don't have to worry about that. Ling Han's sword danced, and he shot out a few flashes of sword chi. Only defending and not attacking was not his style. Feng Yan did not use his saber either. He waved the decree, and the will of martial art within it was enough to destroy the sword chi. However, he was getting more and more anxious in his heart. If this went on, he would really exhaust the decree until it became a piece of scrap paper. He was an extremely arrogant person in the first place, and a fierce light immediately appeared in his eyes. With a twist of his body, the decree slapped onto the head of a person. The will of martial art swept over, and that person's head instantly exploded. That pitiful person had already been suppressed by the might of a spiritual infant tier warrior, and could only lie on the ground, trembling. There was no way for him to dodge, and he could only watch helplessly as misfortune befell him. Feng Yan. Everyone roared in fury. What was this guy planning to do? Ling Han, if you dare to dodge again, I will kill everyone here, Feng Yan said coldly, his killing intent boiling. When these words were spoken, everyone was both shocked and enraged. Those who could attend the wedding today were all people with status in the imperial city, and there were even a few spiritual pedestal tier elites among them. Yet Feng Yan actually dared to use their lives as a threat? This was practically demented. Feng Yan, you've gone too far, a great many people shouted fiercely. This is between you and Ling Han, what does it have to do with us? Don't make us look down on you. Yet Feng Yan acted as if he had not heard them, and said coldly, a bunch of trash, so what if I kill all of them? Who can do anything to me? If I use my full strength, it's not that I cannot kill Ling Han, but that it would force me to reveal my trump card. This is not what I want. Since I can use an easier method to kill him, why should I waste so much effort? Everyone became even more furious, and began to scold him one after another. However, there was one thing that Feng Yan had not said wrongly. He could act recklessly, and kill whenever he wanted to, but no one dared to do anything to him, because Feng Yan was a disciple of the Winter Moon sect. Whoever dared to touch a disciple of the Winter Moon sect, at most, they would be expelled from Rain Country. Ling Han, why don't you just obediently accept your death? Could it be that you want so many people to die with you? Feng Yan laughed loudly, his expression arrogant, as if he was a cat toying with a mouse. As the decree danced in the air, another dozen or so people were smashed into pieces by him. This guy indeed still had trump cards, such as the mirror light body. He had not used it, and this also allowed Ling Han to confirm that this kind of physique was activated on its own. A physique that was activated on its own would definitely need to expend physical strength, origin power, or soul power, and there would be a limit to this, and it could not be maintained forever. On the other hand, Ling Han's body of rock cliff was passive, and did not need to be activated for it to have an effect. However, even if it was actively activated, it would not be able to increase the strength of his physique. Furthermore, Ling Han believed that Feng Yan should have some other secret. Otherwise, he would not have been able to fight to a draw with the eldest imperial prince, and would not have been able to be taken in as a disciple by the spiritual infant tier. Don't make me underestimate you. Ling Han only said this. He naturally would not wait for death. Underestimate me. Feng Yan laughed loudly, and proudly said, what right do you have to underestimate me? You do know that I am, for now, let's keep this a secret. You want to die a heroic death in battle? Impossible. I just want you to die a useless death. His thoughts changed, and he said, everyone, if you want to live, that's fine, but you have to do something for me. Capture Ling Han. I'll give you the time of 3 breaths, and if Ling Han has not knelt in front of me by then, I will have no choice but to draw out my decree and kill all of you. So vicious. Don't doubt my determination. Don't you forget my identity, he said coldly. Everyone's hearts trembled. Feng Yan was not a normal disciple of the Winter Moon sect, but rather the personal disciple of a grand elder. Previously, he had openly opposed the eldest imperial prince, and now, he was even brazenly killing people without the slightest scruple. Feng Yan could do whatever he wanted, but who could do anything to him? Thinking this way, Feng Yan's threat was like a knife pressed against their necks, causing them to tremble in fear. Ling Han did not say anything, and was only looking for a chance. I've given you a chance. If you want to live, then grab hold of it. Feng Yan said with a smile as he put away the decree. Toying with everyone in the palm of his hand, this feeling of being high above made him feel very good. It was at this moment that Ling Han shot out like a sharp arrow, and instantly appeared in front of Feng Yan. Taking advantage of the gap when Feng Yan put away the decree, he moved as fast as lightning, and his long sword struck onto Feng Yan's wrist. Pa! The decree instantly flew out of his hand. Chapter 262. Shua! The decree streaked through the air, and a golden light surged. Ling Han and Feng Yan both leapt up and chased after the decree. Now, whoever could obtain the decree was equivalent to controlling the life and death of everyone present. Peng, 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 the two of them continuously exchanged blows in midair, but it was still Ling Han who had the upper hand and managed to get ahead. Ling Han stretched out his hand, and the tip of his finger was about to touch the decree. He suddenly paused and raised his left hand. The blood-sucking origin gold turned into a golden thread and wrapped around the decree. With another fling, this decree was flung far away by him. The decree floated down lightly. Someone at the side was envious and instantly tried to snatch it. Who would have thought that the moment his hand touched it, with a paw, his entire arm would be shaken into flesh and blood, instantly causing him to scream in pain. Hang! Feng Yan stopped and said coldly, "You sure are careful." Previously, he was indeed caught off guard by Ling Han, but in the subsequent struggle, he was actually not at a disadvantage. However, he purposely held back, wanting Ling Han to grab the decree and take the opportunity to shatter Ling Han's arm. He never thought that Ling Han would be so cautious. Ling Han was not being cautious, but he was a powerful warrior of heaven tier in his last life, so how could he not know about the taboo of a decree? He purposely pretended not to know, and instead used Feng Yan's intention to harm others to successfully send the decree flying. Now that Feng Yan no longer had the decree as a threat, the others naturally did not have to listen to his orders. One-on-one, Ling Han was unafraid. Feng Yan. Everyone gritted their teeth. A mere martial artist from a poor family actually dared to threaten them with his life, causing them to hate him so much that they wanted to devour his flesh and blood. Don't be unconvinced. Feng Yan said proudly, and swept his gaze around. You trash only know how to vent your anger with words, do you dare to attack me? You! Quite a number of people roared loudly with bloodshot eyes. The relatives of those who had been beaten to death by Feng Yan previously were so enraged that their bodies were trembling, but the Winter Moon sect was like a giant beast pressing down on their heads. Who would dare to make a move against Feng Yan when they clearly knew that he was a disciple of the Winter Moon sect? I don't want you, you bunch of trash. Feng Yan laughed coldly, and no longer paid attention to the others. He said to Ling Han, although I will definitely kill you, I cannot help but admit that you are at least much braver than those pieces of trash, to dare to oppose me. Ling Han brandished his sword and said, You talk too much nonsense. Just wash your neck and prepare to die. You really dare to kill me? Feng Yan said with a smile. Are you not afraid of the Winter Moon sect? So what? Ling Han asked calmly. He really did not take the Winter Moon sect to heart. No matter how Feng Yan thought about it, it was impossible for him to know that Ling Han had once been an elite of the heaven tier. Now, his cultivation level had fallen, but how could his pride and vision have fallen? In the future, he would definitely be able to return to the heaven tier, and it would not take too long. Moreover, the Winter Moon sect still had Ao Feng, who he definitely had to get rid of. It was destined that he would have to confront the Winter Moon sect head-on. In comparison, Feng Yan could only be considered a minor character. Ha 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 ha, you have guts. This kind of person is only satisfying to kill. Feng Yan laughed loudly, pointed at Ling Han, and said, If you had not killed my younger brother, I really would not want to get rid of you so quickly. Dream on. Ling Han attacked. His sword swept past, and 6 flashes of sword chi danced in unison. You think I really have to be afraid of you? Feng Yan shouted loudly. A weak silver light flickered on his body, and he slashed with his long saber, with a domineering aura that could not be turned back. Good saber. Xie Chang could not help but exclaim. You're still cheering for this brat? Lu Zhongtian rolled his eyes. This guy had almost killed all of them just now. That's a different matter. This brat's saber technique is indeed not bad. If it was not for Sai, even I would somewhat want to take him as a disciple. Xie Chang shook his head and sighed, appearing to be very regretful. Ding, 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 Ling Han and Feng Yan continued to exchange blows. Saber chi and sword chi danced chaotically, and it was extremely intense. At this moment, Feng Yan had already activated Mirror Light Body, which could reflect about 20% of Ling Han's attacks. This was quite shocking. Not only did it weaken 20% of Ling Han's attack power, it also returned these attacks to Ling Han, strengthening his attacks. When he was receiving the attacks, Feng Yan's body also flickered with a silver light, as if a mirror was about to shatter. Obviously, there was a limit to the attacks that he could reflect. As long as this limit was exceeded, then he would not be able to reflect the attacks, and would instead be directly crushed into pieces. Ling Han's body of rock cliff came into play. He could practically withstand the 20% of the attacks that were reflected back at him, and only felt slightly uncomfortable. However, with just a circulation of the indestructible heaven scroll, this feeling of discomfort completely disappeared. Their right hands danced with sabers and swords, while their left hands continuously formed fists and palms. Even their legs would occasionally kick at each other, sending out one shocking burst of chi after another. The power was extremely shocking. This caused everyone in the surroundings to be speechless. Who in the current younger generation could compete with the two of them? Too strong. Feng Yan was a bit hesitant. This was not a display of his full strength, but if he wanted to kill Ling Han, he would have to use more and stronger trump cards. For the sake of a single Ling Han, was it worth exposing them? Moreover, Ling Han should also have a trump card that he had yet to reveal. At least, he had not used the sword technique that contained 4 consecutive concepts previously, so he had no choice but to hold something back in case of an attack. "I'm not late, am I?" It was at this moment that a bright laugh was heard, and a tall and slender old man walked over with large strides. With every step he took, light would shine under his feet, and a purple circle of light would actually appear, as if a flower had bloomed. This was the intent of martial art, and could only be formed by those in the spiritual ocean tier or at least, and this person had already reached the spiritual pedestal tier. Who were these words directed at? Feng Yan laughed brightly, and said, "Attendant Qiu, you've come at the right time. He, let me introduce myself. I am Qiu Ku, a small attendant of the Winter Moon sect," the old man said with a smile, looking like he was amiable. Yet everyone's hearts suddenly skipped a beat. An attendant of the Winter Moon sect? If Feng Yan was only a disciple, then Qiu Ku could represent the Winter Moon sect's intent to a certain extent. "Attendant Qiu, capture this boy for me," Feng Yan continued. "Sure." Qiu Ku nodded without hesitation, and did not put on any airs just because Feng Yan's cultivation level was far inferior to his. This was naturally because of the spiritual infant tier elite behind Feng Yan. "I dare." Fu Yuansheng immediately stepped forward. Qiu Ku's gaze swept over, and his eyes narrowed slightly as he said, "Black grade high-level alchemist. Let the young deal with their affairs. The older generation can just stand by the side," Fu Yuansheng said calmly, but there was a domineering air that could not be refused. As a member of the Alchemist Society, he was not afraid of the Winter Moon sect. Qiu Ku revealed a hesitant expression. Firstly, he was not willing to offend a high-level alchemist, and secondly, Fu Yuansheng was also in the spiritual pedestal tier, so even if he attacked, he might not be able to kill Ling Han. Feng Yan smiled coldly, and said, "Patriarch of the Lu clan, this person killed the son-in-law of the Lu clan. Could it be that the Lu clan is going to let him get away scot-free? I will not make things difficult for you. As long as you block Master Fu, the benefits that I promised the Lu clan will not be reduced in the slightest." Chapter 263. Everyone exclaimed in shock. The 7 sons of Ao family could be said to have an outstanding reputation, and the Winter Moon sect had placed high hopes on them. In the entire history of the sect, it was very rare for all 7 brothers to be ranked so highly at the same time. But among the 7 of them, 5 had been defeated, and 1 had admitted defeat himself. If even Ao Xinglai was no match for Ling Han, then the 7 sons of Ao family would become a joke. Defeated by the same person in a single day. Ling Han and Ao Xinglai both took a few steps back. One had a hand covering his ribs, while the other had a hand pressed against his face. Lone Wolf's blood circulated, and Ling Han once again charged out. At the same time, he circulated the indestructible Heaven Scroll to heal his injuries. He wanted to defeat Ao Xinglai in a single blow. As his cultivation level increased, the additional effect of Lone Wolf's blood on his battle prowess also became weaker and weaker. Now, it could barely increase his battle prowess by 1 battle star, but no matter how small a mosquito's leg was, it was still meat, so any increase was still a little. Ao Xinglai's face was filled with shock. He had laid in ambush and struck Ling Han when he was caught off guard, but he had actually only managed to severely wound his opponent. No, that couldn't even be considered a severe wound. It was only a slightly more serious injury. And Ling Han's counterattack had also given him a heavy punch, shattering 2 of his teeth. But there was no time for him to be shocked now. Ling Han's fist was flying towards him again, and he could only react. He brandished his sword, and suddenly, 7 flashes of sword chi shot out. Since he had already revealed his trump card, there was no need for him to hide it anymore. With the additional effect of the Black Star Sword, the 7 flashes of sword chi were astonishingly sharp. Ling Han did his best, and with the help of the Eye of Truth, he managed to dodge 6 flashes of sword chi. However, he still did not manage to completely dodge the 7th flash of sword chi, which landed another slash on his leg. Yet Ling Han acted as if he had not felt it at all. Peng, a punch shot out, and landed on Ao Xinglai's face. This was completely an exchange of injury for injury. In everyone's eyes, how sharp was the Black Star Sword? Furthermore, it was a level 5 spirit tool, and the martial intent contained within it could completely crush any cultivator in the spiritual ocean tier. No matter how strong Ling Han's willpower was, how many times could he use it? If Ling Han did not change his battle strategy, then he would only be continuously wounded by Ao Xinglai, and in the end, he would completely lose his battle prowess. But what everyone did not know was that Ling Han possessed the indestructible Heaven Scroll. Ordinary injuries could be healed in an instant, and he also had 3 drops of indestructible true fluid, which could allow him to recover from serious injuries 3 times. What kind of concept was that? He was practically an unkillable monster. Moreover, he possessed a sliver of the divine sense of the heaven tier, so dispelling the martial intent contained within a level 5 spirit tool was nothing to him. If others were to be struck by the Black Star Sword, even if it was only sword chi, they would bleed endlessly, and even their spirit would be destroyed. Otherwise, how could a spirit tool be so terrifying? As far as Ling Han was concerned, the Black Star Sword was only slightly sharper. And it was extremely sharp, and even his body of rock cliff could not withstand it. Peng, 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 peng. The 2 of them continued to exchange injury for injury. Ling Han was covered in wounds, and his face had become pale due to the great loss of blood. Ao Xinglai was not much better off, either. His face was already no different from a pig's head. It could be said that even if Ao Xinglai could win this battle, there was nothing to be proud of. Not only did he have to rely on the might of his spirit tool, his face had also been beaten into a pig's head, and he had completely lost face. Most importantly, Ao Xinglai might not be able to win. Ling Han continued to swallow alchemical pills, and the injuries on his body were actually brought under control. By the looks of it, he could still hold on for a very, very long time. Ling Han was of course only putting on an act when he swallowed pills. He did not want others to know that he possessed a powerful recovery ability. In any case, he had already said that he had an alchemist master who could even gift bottles of Restore Origin pills to others, so it was not strange that he would have a lot of healing pills on him. This kind of scene caused the elite of spiritual pedestal tier to look hesitant. He did not know whether he should stop the battle or not. If this continued, the 2 of them could possibly be crippled. If such a thing really happened, he would not be able to excuse himself. However, just as he was hesitating, Ling Han and Ao Xinglai fiercely exchanged over a dozen blows. Ao Xinglai spat out a mouthful of blood, and his figure staggered. Though his cultivation level was in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, he did not have a divine healing art like the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, so how could he endure Ling Han's continuous barrage of punches? He was now completely relying on his willpower to hold on. He could not lose, he definitely could not lose. He was the leader of the 7 sons of Ao family, and he had inherited the Black Star Sword. He could only be glorious for a lifetime. However, why was his vision becoming more and more blurry? Ao Xinglai's entire face was covered in blood, blurring his vision, and his willpower was similarly becoming blurry. Anyone who had been punched in the head several dozen times by a martial artist of the same cultivation level would definitely feel dizzy and see stars. Everyone understood his condition very well. Even though Ao Xinglai had also taken some alchemical pills, the effects of the pills needed time to take effect. Moreover, medicine was only medicine, and not a divine pill. This caused everyone to be extremely confused. That was because Ling Han's injuries were obviously more severe, yet he was still able to jump around in such a lively manner. Though he was also bathed in blood, his condition was who knew how many times better than Ao Xinglai's. Could it be that this brat had really taken a divine pill? I won't lose, I won't lose. Ao Xinglai staggered, but a willpower supported him. He definitely could not faint. He was Ao Xinglai, and in a battle of the same cultivation level, he definitely could not lose. This kind of fighting spirit caused everyone to involuntarily feel admiration. Whether or not Ao Xinglai was well liked was one thing, but this kind of tenacious willpower was worthy of praise. Even Ling Han nodded internally. However, their standpoints were different, and it also involved the thunder battle armor, so he naturally could not possibly stop. With this fighting spirit of yours. Ling Han delivered another punch. Ao Xinglai found it difficult to even stand, so how could he possibly dodge or parry this punch? Instantly, a punch landed on his chest. I grant you a dignified defeat. Peng! Ao Xinglai fell heavily onto the ground, and could no longer get up. No matter how strong one's willpower was, there would still be a limit. The 9 rounds of battle ended, and Ling Han had 9 wins and 0 losses, fully deserving of the first place. Very good. Now, you all can go back and rest. Tomorrow, the rewards will be distributed, that spiritual pedestal tier elite said. He, too, breathed a sigh of relief. Though Ao Xinglai had been beaten very badly, he had not suffered any serious injuries that could not be healed. Ha, junior brother Han, come, come, come. Come to my place to play. Yu Kai-yu immediately walked over, and extended an invitation to Ling Han. Putting aside the fact that Ling Han had given him 3 bottles of Restore Origin pills, the fact that Ling Han had defeated all the 7 sons of Ao family was enough to make Yu Kai-yu consider him a close friend. Ling Han said, wait for me to clean up, then we'll go to senior brother Yu's place. Of course, of course. Yu Kai-yu nodded hurriedly. Ling Han was currently covered in blood, and would look extremely pathetic when he went up. Naturally, he had to take a good bath first, and then change into a set of clean clothes. Ling Han returned to his residence on Rising Sword Peak, and directly entered into the Black Tower to clean himself up. Then, he gnawed on 100-year-old ginseng to nourish his body, and only then did he go to find Yu Kai-yu. He, too, very much wanted to find out news about his mother through the latter's mouth. Chapter 264. From beginning to end, the Rain Emperor did not even show his face, but his domineering aura was deeply ingrained in everyone's hearts. Even spiritual pedestal tier elites like Fu Yuansheng and the Lu family's patriarch felt a sense of reverence from the bottom of their hearts, and did not have the slightest intention to resist. This was a true overlord. His words were law, and under the grace of the emperor, all were his subjects. Ling Han's gaze turned towards the distant imperial palace, because his divine sense had captured that the Rain Emperor's voice actually came from there. If a normal person knew, they would definitely hold their head and exclaim in shock, how was this possible? They were separated by at least 10 miles, so how could his voice be transmitted so quickly and so clearly? And that punch of the Son of Heaven actually knocked out a spiritual pedestal tier elite? It was practically like a legend. This was too powerful. Spiritual pedestal tier definitely does not have this kind of ability. Ling Han thought. Could it be that the Rain Emperor has already broken through to the Flower Blossom tier? Spiritual pedestal tier and flower blossom tier were only separated by one tier, but this step was like the difference between heaven and earth. The spiritual pedestal tier was a human, and the flower blossom tier was a god. Only those in the flower blossom tier could transmit their voice from 10 miles away, as if they were there in person. With a thought, the fist intent arrived, and easily suppressed the spiritual pedestal tier. That's not right. Ling Han frowned slightly. He faintly captured a sliver of the Rain Emperor's divine sense, but it should not have reached the flower blossom tier yet, which was really strange. Ling Han, I'll let you live for another 10 days. After 10 days, I will personally take your life. Feng Yan laughed coldly, picked up Chiu Ku, and leaped up, quickly disappearing. No one dared to stop him, even if he had killed so many people previously. Ling Han. The 7th Imperial Prince walked over, his face filled with joy. He had gambled correctly on the Rain Emperor's personality. This ruler of a nation was incomparably domineering, so how could he tolerate the Winter Moon sect bullying him? He would definitely retaliate forcefully. However, even he did not think that the Rain Emperor's attitude would be so unyielding that he directly crushed Chiu Ku. No matter what, he had taken the right step and would definitely gain the Rain Emperor's favor, taking another step closer to the throne. Father summons, you'd better hurry, he said smilingly. The Rain Emperor very rarely summoned people to meet him alone, and previously, only Qin Yi and Xiao Huan were able to obtain such a special appearance. Even the princes like them rarely had the chance to meet the Rain Emperor alone. Ling Han nodded at him. A friend in need is a friend indeed. In comparison, the behavior of the eldest and 3rd imperial princes was far too lacking. He glanced at Lu Yutong. The little maidservant had naturally been helped up by the people of the Lu clan long ago. He thought for a moment, and decided not to go over and say anything. The main thing was that he was unhappy with the people of the Lu clan. The Rain Emperor had already clearly expressed his displeasure towards the Lu clan, and he had even smashed the Lu clan with a single punch. He was obviously expressing his displeasure towards the Lu clan, and he believed that the Lu clan would no longer dare to collude with Feng Yan. Young Master Han. The eldest and 3rd imperial princes walked over at the same time. They wore hypocritical smiles on their faces, but their hearts were in turmoil. They regretted it to death. No matter how much they thought about it, they did not think that the Rain Emperor would actually make a forceful move. They saw that Feng Yan had caused such a ruckus previously, but the power of the imperial family did not react at all. They thought that it would be the same this time, but they did not think that an accident would occur. If they had known this would happen, they would have supported Ling Han. That way, they would have been able to form a deeper friendship with him, and also gain the favor of the Rain Emperor. Now, they were in the middle of nowhere. Ling Han only smiled calmly, and said, I have to meet the Emperor, and have no time to converse with the 2 imperial princes. After saying so, he swung his arm and left. Fury appeared in the eyes of the eldest and 3rd imperial princes at the same time. A mere mortal actually dared to show disrespect to the 2 imperial princes. But now was not the time to bother about this problem. The 7th imperial prince had suddenly exerted his strength, and had already taken the lead in the struggle for imperial power. In front of the imperial throne, everything else could be set aside. The 2 of them exchanged a look, and smiled at the same time. Their 7th brother was now in the limelight too much, and had to be suppressed a little so that the 3 of them could once again return to the same starting line. Ling Han nodded at Guang Yuan and the others from a distance, and signaled for Guang Yuan and Zhu Wujiu to take Hunyo back first, while he strode towards the imperial palace. For a gushing spring-tier martial artist, the distance of 5 kilometers was only a matter of 10 minutes. He very soon arrived in front of the imperial palace. "Please follow me." An imperial guard walked over. He had a medium build and was only about 30 years old, yet was already in the spiritual ocean tier. This was very shocking in Rain Country. Since the Rain Emperor had summoned him, then everything had naturally been arranged. Ling Han followed the imperial guard, and said, "How should I address you, my lord?" "Zai Xiang," the imperial guard said coldly, very similar to Kenya's style. Prime Minister Ling Han could not help but be startled, thinking, "Your parents are probably going to be disappointed, but now you've become a guard." "Xiang, not Prime Minister," Zai Xiang said calmly. Who knew what Prime Minister he was talking about, but since he defended himself, it meant that he was definitely not Prime Minister. Ling Han laughed, and did not continue on the issue of names. After all, the other was in the spiritual ocean tier, so he would not fly into a rage out of humiliation and turn around to slap him. This person should be the Rain Emperor's trusted aide. A spiritual ocean tier martial artist in his 30s, and with the Rain Emperor's careful nurturing, he could possibly break through to the spiritual pedestal tier around 40 years old. Zai Xiang was obviously not a talkative person. If Ling Han did not ask, he definitely had no intention of opening his mouth. He led Ling Han all the way, and all the imperial guards on the way bowed respectfully when they saw Zai Xiang, not having the slightest intention of interrogating Ling Han's identity. Obviously, Zai Xiang's status was recognized by all the imperial guards. The two of them soon arrived at the main heaven palace. This was the place where the Rain Emperor presided over affairs and the court officials paid their respects. Now that it was past the time for court affairs, the whole palace appeared empty. "Go in yourself," Zai Xiang said coldly. "What a cold guy," Ling Han said in his mind as he walked into the main hall. This was the largest palace among the group of palaces. Stone pillars that were as tall as 100 meters held up the enormous palace, giving one a feeling of awe of grandeur and magnificence. As far as the eye could see, the whole palace was empty, but Ling Han knew that there was an imperial guard hidden behind every stone pillar, and their abilities were all in the spiritual ocean tier. And at the end of the palace, a throne was erected high, and a man of about 50 years old sat there. He was obviously just sitting, but he exuded an endless domineering aura that caused one's heart to tremble. Rain Emperor he should be 60 soon, but he was only a little over 50 years old. He really took good care of himself. At the feet of the Rain Emperor, there was a woman sitting cross-legged as if she was serving him, but Ling Han could tell that this woman was actually cultivating. It was actually Su Ku Xian. It was said that this woman was favored, and it was indeed true. She could actually accompany the emperor during the day. However, accompanying the emperor shouldn't be a pleasurable act, but why was she cultivating? This was a strange thing. Moreover, with a single glance, Ling Han could be sure that the Rain Emperor was definitely not someone who cared about women. Otherwise, he definitely could not have his current abilities. Half a step into the flower blossom tier no, half a step into the flower blossom tier was only close to the flower blossom tier. In reality, he was still in the spiritual pedestal tier, still immortal. Thoughts flashed through Ling Han's mind, and he thought that this should have something to do with power of the nation, which allowed the Rain Emperor to cross that half a step and truly possess the might of the flower blossom tier. "Young man, you give me a headache," the Rain Emperor said, and there was endless power of the nation. Chapter 265. Ling Han clasped his hands in greeting, and said, "This junior pays his respects to the Rain Emperor." He called himself a junior, so he naturally performed the etiquette of a martial artist, and did not need to kneel. And if he paid his respects as a subject, then he had to kneel. These were two completely different standpoints. The Rain Emperor did not blame him, but instead revealed a sliver of a smile, and said, "Young man, you are very arrogant." At his feet, Su Ku Xian was startled awake. She opened her eyes and looked towards Ling Han, her pretty face revealing a sliver of surprise. She had clearly seen this young man before, and at that time, she even had a sliver of killing intent, but did not act. She did not think that this person actually had the right to pay respects to the Rain Emperor. This was very shocking. Your Majesty is the one who is awe-inspiring, defeating that bullshit attendant of the Winter Moon sect with a single punch, making this junior's blood boil. Ling Han gave a small bit of flattery. Ha 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 ha. The Rain Emperor laughed loudly, shook his head, and said, "Do you think that if you speak a little sweeter, I can forget the trouble you caused?" Su Kuxian could not help but be shocked. She had been by the Rain Emperor's side for a few years, and had almost never seen the Rain Emperor laugh like this, and use a teasing tone to speak to a young man. She could not believe it. Ling Han said seriously, "Please forgive me, Your Majesty." The Rain Emperor humphed, and said, "No matter how angry I am, I would not dare to do anything to a black-grade high-level alchemist." Su Kuxian's beautiful eyes involuntarily widened. A black-grade high-level alchemist was right in front of her, and this young man, how could it be possible? But how could the Rain Emperor speak carelessly? She had to believe it even if she did not want to. Ling Han laughed, and said, "I have not thanked Your Majesty for helping me out of my predicament. I will definitely repay you in the future." Since the Rain Emperor pointed out his identity as a black-grade high-level alchemist, he spoke to the Rain Emperor as an alchemist, and in terms of status, he was only slightly inferior. The Rain Emperor used his finger to lightly tap on the armrest, and said, "Eldest, third, and seventh, you've met them all. Who do you think is more suitable to inherit the throne?" "Should I ask him this question?" Ling Han thought about it and said, "Your Majesty should have already made up your mind. I don't dare to say anything. You are a black-grade high-level alchemist, and both Fu Yuansheng and Wu Songlin are very obedient to you. If you disagree with me and encourage alchemists not to sell their pills to the citizens of Rain Country in the future, then wouldn't the country be destroyed in a day?" the Rain Emperor said calmly. Ling Han could not help but break out in a cold sweat. This hat was a little too big. The Son of Heaven was also temperamental. If he thought that he was a disaster and would threaten the imperial power, then no matter who he was, he would directly eliminate him. His spirit was highly focused, and he would enter into the Black Tower the moment there was any abnormal movement. At most, the Rain Emperor would discover that he had a secret technique that allowed him to teleport instantly, or that he could conceal himself. Even if he had to reveal a bit of his secret, it was still better than losing his life. Rest your little heart safely in your chest. If I wanted to kill you, you would not have been able to walk all the way here alive, the Rain Emperor said calmly. Ling Han laughed mischievously. On the surface, he breathed a sigh of relief, but in his heart, he did not relax at all. He would not easily trust another person. "Ling Han, what should I do with you?" the Rain Emperor said. "An alchemist that can concoct foundation-building pill. Rain Country might even be thrown into chaos because of you." Su Kuxian finally could not help but cough. The foundation-building pill that had caused such a commotion in the imperial city was actually concocted by Ling Han. Inconceivable, inconceivable. How old was he? How could he possibly concoct foundation-building pill? Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, "In the future, if I concoct foundation-building pill again, I will prioritize giving half of it to the imperial family." "Good." The Rain Emperor finally smiled, and the tense atmosphere instantly dissipated. Truly, being in the Emperor's company was like being in the company of a tiger. The Emperor was temperamental, and would kill at the slightest provocation, making it difficult for one not to be nervous. Ling Han could not help but curse silently. If he still had the cultivation he had in his last life, he would definitely hang the Rain Emperor up and give him a good thrashing. He actually dared to scare him, but at this moment, he could only smile bitterly, and say, "I was almost scared to death by His Imperial Majesty." The Rain Emperor had laid the groundwork, and then said a threat. Actually, it was all for the sake of the foundation-building pill. "Ha, you will definitely become an Earth-grade alchemist in the future. Even if I see you, I will have to welcome you with open arms. Now that your wings are not fully grown yet, I naturally have to beat you a little, bully you a little, or there will not be a chance in the future, the Rain Emperor said with a smile. Ling Han also smiled. Actually, the Rain Emperor was also a humorous person. It did not matter whether he was willing or not to make you feel amused. Eldest brother and third brother are still lacking in terms of temperament. They have ambition, but do not have the corresponding vigor. The Rain Emperor spoke up, giving his sons his evaluation. Seventh brother is also a little too cautious and cautious. He is more than capable of defending his achievements, but lacks the ability to advance. He paused for a moment, then said, "You should be supporting seventh brother. With the help of a future Earth-grade alchemist, I can also retire with peace of mind. I have decided, after my 60th birthday, I will pass the throne to seventh brother, and from then on, I will focus on martial art." Su Ku Xian was greatly shocked, and her beautiful face paled. She could not help but call out, "Your Imperial Majesty." The Rain Emperor stretched out a hand and pressed down, stopping her words. He said, "You should also leave." Ling Han did not pay attention to the two of them talking in riddles, and said, "Congratulations, Your Imperial Majesty." "Why are you congratulating me?" the Rain Emperor asked with a smile. "Putting aside the affairs of the nation, Your Imperial Majesty will be able to focus on breaking through to the flower blossom tier, and from then on transcending mortality and entering sainthood," Ling Han said with a smile. The Rain Emperor's eyes involuntarily lit up, and instantly, his aura surged like the waves of the sea, and he said, "You are actually able to guess my cultivation level?" Ling Han smiled slightly, and said in a tone that was neither servile nor overbearing, "I am an alchemist, so my divine sense is much stronger than that of ordinary people." The Rain Emperor nodded. This young man was indeed unique. Otherwise, he would not have been able to concoct alchemical pills close to Earth grade when he was only in the poly tier. He stretched out a finger to tap on the armrest and said, "Half a month later, I will hold a birthday banquet, and at the same time, there will be a martial arts tournament to celebrate my birthday." Ling Han did not know what these words meant, so he only nodded, and did not reply. "The prize for the person who wins first place in the martial arts tournament is a treasure from the inner treasury," the Rain Emperor said slowly. Ling Han's mind instantly trembled. The Eye of Truth. The Rain Emperor was already half a step into the flower blossom tier, and added with the help of power of the nation, he was like a god in Rain country. His sight and hearing were almost omnipresent, and presumably, the few deals that the eldest and third imperial princes made with him were not hidden from this Rain Emperor. Ling Han's heart tightened. Then what about the matter of the Lu sisters? Strictly speaking, he was shielding the murderer who tried to assassinate the imperial concubine, which was no different from rebellion. And, he probably would not know. The Rain Emperor was only human, after all. Even if he broke through to the flower blossom tier, he would only transcend mortals, and was still far from becoming a god. He could only focus his limited attention on a few important people. For example, his 3 sons who were qualified to compete for the throne, and their every move definitely could not be hidden from him. He was secretly comparing which one was more suitable to inherit the throne. Thus, the matter of Ling Han and the eldest and third imperial princes discussing how to steal the Eye of Truth naturally could not be hidden from this Rain Emperor. Now that the Rain Emperor took out the Eye of Truth as a reward, the unspoken meaning was, "I am very clear about your little tricks, and as long as you are willing to listen to me, there will naturally be benefits for you." As expected of the ruler of a nation, he was so adept at manipulating power. Chapter 266. With regards to the Eye of Truth, Ling Han was determined to obtain it. Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, "Your Majesty, the Eye of Truth involves a mystical power, and at that time, there will definitely be countless people participating in the battle. Powerful warriors of spiritual pedestal tier might also be shameless enough to participate. I really don't have much confidence." Unless he drew out the Black Tower, but once the Black Tower was drawn out, there would be powerful warriors of immortal tier descending to snatch it. That was much more important than a mystical power. Rain Emperor laughed loudly, and said, "No need to play tricks in front of me. The tournament this time is limited to those below 30 years old. If you don't have the ability to come out on top, then you can only blame yourself for not having the ability." Ling Han thought for a moment. If it was someone below 30 years old, then the only one who could be his opponent was Feng Yan. "You are a subject of Rain Country, so I want you to defeat Feng Yan in front of everyone in the world, and raise the prestige of Rain Country," Rain Emperor said. It was indeed as Ling Han had guessed. Feng Yan had caused too much of a ruckus previously, and had even casually killed quite a few nobles, causing Rain Emperor to be angered. However, no matter how domineering and awe-inspiring the Rain Emperor was, he was first and foremost the ruler of a country, so he couldn't just consider a moment of impulse. If he killed Feng Yan, then he would definitely provoke the powerful warriors of the Winter Moon sect. Then even if Rain Country wasn't destroyed, they would have to pay a huge price to appease the fury of the Winter Moon sect. This kind of thing was naturally not something a mature ruler would do. But he could allow Feng Yan to be so arrogant, so impudent, Rain Emperor was so domineering, so he naturally wouldn't allow such a thorn to appear right under his nose. Since he couldn't kill him, then he would defeat him in front of everyone, dampening Feng Yan's spirit and teaching him a lesson. Ling Han nodded. Even without Rain Emperor's request, he wouldn't be courteous towards Feng Yan. If there was a chance, he definitely wouldn't mind killing this guy. "Go." Rain Emperor waved his hand and closed his eyes, as if he had fallen asleep. Obviously, he didn't want to speak with Ling Han anymore. Ling Han exited the palace, and left the imperial palace accompanied by Zai Xiang. This person turned and walked 2 steps, then suddenly turned around and said, "Ling Han, don't disappoint His Majesty's expectations." Without waiting for Ling Han's reply, he swaggered off, appearing very domineering. Ling Han shook his head. The Rain Emperor was domineering because he had the ability to be domineering. Zai Xiang's every word and action was imitating the Rain Emperor, but he had only learned the form, and was completely unable to learn the essence of it. He couldn't be bothered to argue and walked back to Huyang University. "Ling Han, right?" A sweet voice rang out from behind him, charming to the bone. Ling Han turned his head and saw that Su Xian was standing behind him. Her voluptuous figure was extremely eye-catching. However, he didn't give him a second look and said, "What advice do you have?" He was now a black-grade high-level alchemist, so there was absolutely no need for him to lower his voice to an imperial concubine. "I really didn't expect that a small character like you would become an alchemy grandmaster." Su Xian shook her head and then bowed. Her white dress fluttered in the wind like a blooming flower. "Su Xian greets Grandmaster." Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "You flatter me, Imperial concubine Su's gift is too heavy." Su Xian stood up, pursed her lips into a smile, and said, "Grandmaster, Su Xian wants to ask a favor." "Imperial concubine Su, you seem to be asking the wrong person. His Imperial Majesty, the Rain Emperor, is the ruler of Rain Country. If you have any needs, asking His Imperial Majesty should be the right thing to do, right?" Ling Han said. Su Xian sighed, her expression sorrowful. If someone unrelated saw this, they would definitely pity her and be moved by her pitiful appearance. Unfortunately, this trick was completely useless in front of Ling Han. Grandmaster doesn't know, but Su Xian is only His Imperial Majesty's concubine in name. Seeing that Ling Han was unperturbed, she could only say this faintly. "Oh." Ling Han nodded and turned to leave. "Wait." Su Xian hurriedly caught up and said, "Su Xian wants to use a cultivation technique to exchange for 10 foundation building pills." She was now in the 3rd layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and though there was still a long way to go before she reached the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, under the flower blossom tier, it was not difficult to break through a small tier. It was only a matter of time. Thus, she would be able to break through to the spiritual pedestal tier in a few years' time. If she had 10 foundation building pills, her chances of success would naturally increase greatly. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh, and said, Imperial concubine Su has such a big appetite. You're talking about 10 foundation building pills, not 10 return origin pills. In reality, in the eyes of an alchemy emperor like him, there was really no difference between foundation building pills and return origin pills. Su Kuxian also knew that she was asking for an exorbitant price, but when bargaining, how could she possibly reveal the bottom line that she could accept? She said, that's because the cultivation technique that Su Kuxian wants to exchange for is definitely worth this price. Oh, tell me about it. Ling Han was non-committal. Grandmaster, please follow Su Kuxian to a quiet place, Su Kuxian said. Ling Han was slightly curious, so he nodded and agreed. The two of them went to a tea house, asked for a private room, and sat opposite each other. What cultivation technique? Ling Han was not in the mood to beat around the bush. Su Kuxian could also see Ling Han's impatience, so she didn't continue to keep him in suspense. She said, Shapeless Heart Sutra, a complete 6-layer cultivation technique. A few thoughts instantly flashed through Ling Han's mind, and he was able to link some things together. Putting aside what level of cultivation technique the Shapeless Heart Sutra was, the key was that it had a complete 6-layer cultivation technique, which meant that it could be cultivated to the flower blossom tier. And what did the 9 nations of the desolate north lack the most? It was the cultivation technique of the flower blossom tier, which limited the appearance of flower blossom tier martial artists. Not counting those that relied on the infusion of the nation's fortune, it was impossible for them to leave the nation. Otherwise, they would lose the support of the nation's fortune, and their cultivation would immediately drop to its original level. Moreover, if their lifespan exceeded the limit, they would directly die of old age once they left the nation's gates. The relationship between the Rain Emperor and Su Kuxian was rather special, and recalling that she had previously said that she was only the Rain Emperor's concubine in name, it could be more or less confirmed that Su Kuxian and the Rain Emperor had made a similar deal. She was probably able to borrow the nation's fortune to cultivate, which was why she broke through to the spiritual ocean tier in a short few years. Thinking more broadly, in the past, Su Kuxian had a falling out with the Falling Flower Palace. Was it really because of an alchemical pill that maintained one's appearance? It should be the Shapeless Heart Sutra that made Su Kuxian want to monopolize it, or perhaps the higher-ups of the Falling Flower Palace wanted to silence her, but Su Kuxian made the first move, which led to the destruction of the Falling Flower Palace. Su Kuxian also fled to the Rain Country afterwards, and made a deal with the Rain Emperor. Thus, the Rain Emperor was able to advance a step further and become half a step into the Flower Blossom tier. He had already opened the door to the Flower Blossom tier, and it wouldn't be long before he could truly cross over. Su Kuxian definitely wouldn't have thought that she had only said the name of a cultivation technique, but it made Ling Han think of so many things. If she knew, she would definitely be shocked by Ling Han's reasoning ability. Ling Han naturally had no interest in the Shapeless Heart Sutra. Putting aside the fact that it was only a 6-layer cultivation technique, even if it was a complete set of 9 layers, he couldn't be bothered to take another look. He said calmly, I'm still far from the flower blossom tier, so I'm not interested at the moment. Su Kuxian's small mouth instantly gaped slightly, incredibly shocked. Reading on one's phone was even more refreshing. Chapter 267. On the second day, Ling Han still obtained the Thunder Battle Armor, which caused him to be extremely pleased. Firstly, the Thunder Battle Armor was indeed a precious treasure. Back then, Zi Shuxian had worn it like it was a treasure every day. Secondly, it was precisely because this was a spirit tool that had been used by an old friend that Ling Han was filled with nostalgia. He had been reborn after tens of thousands of years, and the whole world was filled with strangers. Seeing an old item belonging to someone from the past, how could he not be overwhelmed with emotions? Then let's go to the Dark Demon Forest, Ling Han decided. The main reason he had come to the Winter Moon sect was to find out about his mother's whereabouts, cause trouble for the AO clan, and steal some good things along the way. And now, these three objectives had basically been achieved. He had gathered a considerable amount of spiritual medicine, and even obtained the Thunder Battle armor. He had defeated all the 7 sons of the AO clan, and even killed AO Zitai. Finally, since Yu Kai-yu was going with him, then there would naturally be a lot of opportunities for him to get some information out of him. This cousin of his was not much different from his uncle. They were both very straightforward, and could not hide any secrets. Thus, after obtaining the Thunder Battle armor, Ling Han decided to be on his way. Yu Kai-yu went with him, looking very excited. As it turned out, this guy had only gone out to gain experience twice, and both times were not far from the Winter Moon sect. He had never really gone out on a long journey. Ling Han sighed. This guy said he wanted to help, but the best result would be that he did not hold him back. He and Yu Kai-yu set out, heading down the mountain. Ling Han. However, when they arrived at the foot of the mountain, they suddenly heard a voice that was filled with resentment ring out behind them. This voice belongs to Feng Yan. Ling Han did not turn around. He was now Han Lin, and not Ling Han. You actually have the guts to come here, die. Feng Yan roared angrily. He drew his saber and slashed at Ling Han. Xiao, 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 there were actually 6 flashes of saber chi that appeared at the same time, turning into 6 sharp blades that gleamed with a cold light, slashing at Ling Han. This guy's improvement was also very fast. Previously, when he was in Rain Country, he had only formed 4 flashes of saber chi, but now, he had shockingly reached 6 flashes. After having one of his legs crippled by Ling Han, he had received a huge blow, which had instead increased his comprehension of the path of the saber. Shua, cold air filled the air, and the sharp saber chi sliced through the air, extremely terrifying. Are you crazy? Because he was standing together with Ling Han, Yu Kai-yu was naturally within the attack range of this attack. Moreover, the name that Feng Yan had called out was very strange, so he naturally would not associate it with Ling Han. He only thought that he had encountered a madman, and immediately shot out a punch. His arms immediately became like black metal, and his martial intent turned into patterns that shone on his arms. 6 flashes of fist chi surged out. Pang! The fist landed on the body of the saber, and the fist chi and saber chi also collided fiercely, both of them being destroyed. Feng Yan's eyes turned cold, and he asked, "Who are you, and why are you standing up for this person?" Yu Kai-yu walked over, and could not help but be surprised, because this person was actually a cripple. He had obviously lost one of his legs, and now had a prosthetic one. What was revealed at the bottom of his trousers was a piece of silver-white metal that was shaped like a disc, and was propped up on the ground. He then swept his eyes over the symbol on Feng Yan's sleeves, and could not help but be even more surprised. He mumbled, "When did our Winter Moon sect take in cripples? Furthermore, isn't this cripple very powerful?" He spoke very directly. This cripple was the truth, and actually did not have any derogatory meaning, but in Feng Yan's ears, this cripple was filled with malice. "You're courting death." Feng Yan's eyes turned sharp, and he was about to strike again. Ling Han turned around, and said, "Is there something wrong with you? The moment you come, you start fighting and killing. Where are the rules of the sect?" Feng Yan was startled. The back view of him, Ling Han, was 100% similar to that of his great enemy, so why was it that when he turned around, there was such a huge difference? This young man could almost be considered a young man. His appearance was not too impressive, and was worlds apart from Ling Han's appearance. But why did his voice give him a very familiar feeling, and his back view was extremely similar to Ling Han's? Furthermore, his expression and the tone of his words were also filled with a feeling that he detested. "I've mistaken you for someone else." Thoughts raced through his mind, but in the end, he only managed to say this. "Lunatic," Yu Kai-yu glared fiercely at him. He was the eldest grandson of the Yu clan, yet he had been ambushed for no apparent reason, which made him very displeased. But when he thought of his and Ling Han's mission, he temporarily did not have the time to bicker with Feng Yan. Thus, he said, I have something to attend to now, and I'll deal with you when I return. As he said this, he pulled Ling Han and left. Looking at Ling Han's back view, killing intent once again rose up on Feng Yan's face. He turned his head to look at a disciple by the roadside, and asked, Who are these two people? Who are you? Why should I tell you? That disciple asked, raising his head high. He was very displeased with Feng Yan's attitude. Feng Yan's eyes sharpened, and he exuded a frightening murderous aura. Instantly, that disciple was terrified, and he hurriedly said, The older one is Yu Kai Yu, senior brother Yu. He is the great-grandson of Grand Elder Yu, and the other one is called Han Lin. He has only entered the sect 2 days ago, and is merely a troublemaker. The moment he arrived, he killed Attendant Ao's beloved daughter. Now, he has been punished to enter the dark demon forest to gather fiery sun grass. Feng Yan's right index finger instantly flicked, and killing intent circulated. Han Lin and Ling Han, wasn't that the exact opposite? Moreover, a newly joined disciple was so audacious that he dared to kill the attendant's daughter. This was very much in line with Ling Han's personality. He immediately soared up and headed towards the White Cloud main peak. This was the place where all the higher-ups of the Winter Moon sect resided. If one wanted to enter this place, one had to at least be in the spiritual pedestal tier, or be the personal disciple of an elite of the spiritual infant tier or flower blossom tier. Even Yu Kai Yu did not have the right to live here. Feng Yan found the place where the information of sect disciples was registered, and directly took out Grand Elder Shi's token of authentication, requesting to see Ling Han's information. Suspicion was only suspicion, after all. He wanted concrete evidence. Han Lin, 19 years old, from Fuyun Mountain, first layer spiritual ocean tier cultivation when he entered the sect. As Feng Yan spoke, the corners of his lips curled into a cold smile, and he said, Send someone to Fuyun Mountain to verify this person's information. Young Master Yan, this is making a big fuss over a minor issue, isn't it? If I tell you to go, then go. Do you want me to ask my master to come talk to you? I wouldn't dare. When Feng Yan walked out, his expression was dark. Han Lin, if you are really Ling Han, then I will definitely have you die in the Winter Moon sect, because you are seeking your own death by hiding your identity. If I kill you, I will only be killing a minor character called Han Lin. Humph. Ling Han and Yu Kai Yu set off, heading towards Sea Breeze City. This trip to the Dark Demon Forest would take an unknown amount of time, so he naturally had to call Lu Yutong and the others first. Anyways, Yu Kai Yu did not know anyone. To avoid being targeted by Ao Feng, Yuzhen Shan even personally escorted them. Only when they had left the Yulong Mountains for a long time and still did not find any traces of Ao Feng did he finally return to the Winter Moon sect. That was because if Ao Feng lost a daughter, then so be it. Anyways, he still had quite a number of daughters, but he only had this one son. The two of them arrived at Sea Breeze City. This was an extremely large city, and was more than 10 times larger than the imperial city of Rain Country. The city walls that were more than 100 meters tall cast a long shadow, and the whole city looked like a huge, creeping beast. Let's go find a few friends first, Ling Han said. All right, Yu Kai Yu said without any ulterior motives. He was not afraid of being sold out by Ling Han. Cell phones were more refreshing to read. Chapter 268. Ling Han naturally didn't trust Su Ku Xin at all, so he immediately opened the cloth, and there was indeed a black box inside. It wasn't made of metal, but of wood, emitting a faint scent of sandalwood. He was inspecting the box, and Su Ku Xin was naturally inspecting the foundation building pills as well. Neither of them spoke. As expected, it couldn't be opened. It wasn't because it was locked, but because the lid was tightly sealed, and there was no way to exert force, so the only way was to break it open with brute force. Ling Han looked surprised, because he recognized this wood. Link Origin Heart Wood. This was a very precious material, and had two characteristics. One was that it was tough, and the other was that it could lock in the loss of spiritual qi. Thus, it was most suitable for storing some precious medicinal ingredients. As long as it was closed, it could ensure that the medicinal ingredients wouldn't spoil for thousands or even tens of thousands of years. He shook it. There was something inside, and judging from the movement, there should only be one item. It felt very heavy, but as for what it was, he couldn't possibly determine. Little brother, big sister thanks you, Su Ku Xian said with a sweet smile, putting away the jade bottle with great satisfaction. Though she, too, wanted to know what was hidden inside the wooden box, and was even more certain that it was definitely a treasure, she had already studied it for many years, and had tried all kinds of methods, but was still unable to open it. Thus, she simply handed it over to Ling Han so that she wouldn't continue to worry about it. Ling Han ignored her, causing her to be annoyed, but because she was in a good mood, she didn't take it to heart, and pushed open the door and walked out. When she left, Ling Han directly waved his hand, and the wooden box entered into the Black Tower. He didn't enter the Black Tower immediately, but stood up and left. Since it was already in the Black Tower, it was destined to be his, and no one could take it away. He returned to his own courtyard in the academy, closed the door, and then entered the Black Tower. In his last life, with his cultivation of Heaven Tier, opening the box made from Link Origin Heart Wood was naturally a piece of cake, but gushing Spring Tier cultivation was far from enough. Otherwise, why would Su Ku Xian be unable to open this box for so many years? She was in the spiritual ocean tier, after all. However, in the Black Tower, Ling Han was a god. With a thought, the wooden box was opened. It was as easy as flipping his hand. Inside the box was a piece of jade in the shape of a strip. As soon as the box was taken out, a rich fragrance wafted out, causing his spirit to be greatly uplifted. All the pores on his body opened up. Ling Han revealed an excited expression. This was not jade, but a medicinal ointment, the 100 Poison Jade Ointment. I never thought that such a thing actually existed. He stretched out a hand and pressed down, and all the fragrant aroma was pressed back into the wooden box. In the Black Tower, he could control everything, just like a god. The 100 Poison Jade Ointment was not formed naturally, but was concocted. It required more than 100 kinds of poisons, as well as the 7 fragrant jade, and was concocted using a secret method. This was not a poison. It would be a huge waste if someone were to use it to poison others. If these 100 types of poisons were used individually, even a flower blossom tier elite warrior would be poisoned to death. However, when they were put together and fused in a miraculous ratio, their toxicity would restrain each other, turning poison into good medicine. The more powerful the toxicity, the more abundant the energy. However, if someone directly ate it like this, it would definitely be a dead end, because when 100 kinds of poisons were mixed together, the explosive energy would be too terrifying. It would be a piece of cake for a flower blossom tier warrior to be stuffed to death. However, with the addition of the 7 fragrant jade, the violent energy could flow out in a gentle manner, which could be absorbed. Of course, the 100 Poison Jade Ointment was not meant to be eaten, but applied on the body and absorbed into the body through the skin. It was not impossible to take it orally, but if 100 poisons entered the stomach, it would still cause a considerable effect on the body. The beauty of this was that those with higher cultivation could apply more, and those with lower cultivation could apply less. It could be used by people of different cultivation levels to increase their cultivation and strengthen their physique. It was an extremely precious treasure. Poisons were easy to find, but the 7 fragrant jade was too rare. Even in his last life, he had a lot of resources in his hands, but he only managed to concoct it once, and the quantity was not even comparable to this one. This kind of treasure indeed needed to be sealed with link origin heartwood, or else the medicinal effects would quickly evaporate, and it would not even be preserved for a month. He didn't know who it was that was so generous, actually burying the link origin heartwood box and the 100 poison jade ointment together. It was practically a huge waste. Just nice, it's a bargain for me, Ling Han said with a smile. As he took off his clothes, he began to apply the 100 poison jade ointment on his body. A cool feeling surged, making his whole body feel comfortable. Feng Yan seems to be quite confident that he can defeat me in 10 days' time. Thinking about it, he should be relying on being able to break through within these 10 days. After all, a major tier is a threshold, and whether or not I've crossed it makes a big difference. As Ling Han sat down cross-legged, he circulated the 5 elements heaven-grade skill to absorb the medicinal effects. Within the Black Tower, he could even lock the ointment's evaporation and have it completely applied to his body, ensuring that there was not the slightest bit of wastage. This was extremely shocking. Absorbing 100% of the medicinal effects was practically terrifying. The martial arts tournament only has about 10 days' time, so it's impossible for me to break through to the spiritual ocean tier in such a short time. However, if I can increase my strength a little, then I'll increase it a little. I must obtain the Eye of Truth. In a short while, Ling Han felt his whole body heat up. The medicinal effects had already taken full effect, and his skin felt as if it was about to be torn apart, extremely painful. Fuck, I don't have any experience, so I applied too much. He gritted his teeth. In his last life, though he had concocted the 100 poison jade ointment, that was for his 4 disciples to use. At that time, the weakest of the 4 was already in the spiritual pedestal tier. Now, he had already reduced the dosage, but the gap between the gushing spring tier and the spiritual pedestal tier was still too great, so he still cried out in pain. Thankfully, he had cultivated the body of rock cliff. Not only did he have amazing defense, he could even turn into rock and cut off his sense of pain. As he actively channeled the body of rock cliff, the pain immediately disappeared, but visible to the naked eye, multiple cracks appeared on his skin, and fresh blood seeped out. He tried to find joy in the midst of suffering, thinking that it was fortunate that he had not applied the ointment to that crucial area. Otherwise, he would really be crying right now. There was a powerful flow of energy circulating within his body, pushing the spring eye to expand continuously and spurting out surging origin power. After about 3 hours, Ling Han stopped. The ointment that had been applied to his body had been completely absorbed by him, and his cultivation level had risen to the late period of the 5th layer of the gushing spring tier. At this rate, when the day of the martial arts competition came, his cultivation level should be able to reach the 8th layer of the gushing spring tier. 8th layer against spiritual ocean, I should be able to put up a fight. Ling Han nodded. His situation was special, and his combat ability far exceeded his realm. Channeling the indestructible heaven scroll, the wounds on his body quickly healed. He summoned some clean water and washed off the bloodstains on his body. Then, he put on his clothes. Hunyo actually did not come to pester him today, and instead obediently stayed inside the Black Tower. Ling Han spread out his divine sense and swept it over. As it turned out, this little girl was actually breaking through to gushing spring tier. A 5 or 6-year-old in gushing spring tier, just the thought of it was enough to make one speechless. Chapter 269. Feng Yan once again released news that he would participate in the martial arts tournament, and would defeat and kill Ling Han in the tournament. The conditions for participating in this martial arts battle had already been decided. In the end, it would definitely be a battle between the strong between Ling Han and Feng Yan. However, Feng Yan had declared that he would kill Ling Han in such an unbridled manner, displaying his usual arrogance to the extreme. Ling Han, however, was somewhat passive. Because the Rain Emperor only told him to defeat Feng Yan, and did not say that he could kill him. The Rain Emperor might be domineering, but he was also the ruler of a nation, and had to consider the bigger picture. Naturally, he could not form a death feud with the Winter Moon sect. If Ling Han really killed Feng Yan, then the Rain Emperor would definitely tie him up and send him to the Winter Moon sect without another word. There was no need to doubt that this was the only result. If Ling Han was alone, then it was fine. After killing him, he could directly hide in the Black Tower, and after hiding for a while, he would naturally be able to leave safely. Would the Rain Emperor stay by the side of the Black Tower all day? Moreover, he did not know what method Ling Han had used to disappear at all. The problem was, Ling Han also had family. He could run, but how could Ling Dongxing and the others run? Ling Han could not help but feel troubled. How could he kill Feng Yan while ensuring his own safety? No matter how he thought about it, it was impossible. Because the Rain Emperor would definitely not allow such a thing to happen. He would definitely watch over the scene, and be able to move and resolve any danger at any time, whether it was Ling Han's or Feng Yan's. One of them was the disciple of an elite of the spiritual infant tier, and the other was a pseudo-earth grade alchemist. No matter which one died, it would be hard for the Rain Emperor to explain. Now that the Rain Emperor borrowed the power of the nation, he was practically in the flower blossom tier. His ability was far beyond the imagination of mortals, and it was impossible to kill someone right under his nose. Qiu Ku was a good example. Since that was the case, Ling Han spread the news that he had become a black-grade high-level alchemist, which made Feng Yan feel gloomy. Moreover, he had not suffered any loss in his confrontation with Feng Yan. Instead, Feng Yan had lost a younger brother and a younger cousin, so Feng Yan would definitely be more displeased. Once this news spread, no one knew just how big the shadow that Feng Yan had cast over him was, but the entire imperial capital was in an uproar because of this. Compared to Feng Yan being taken as a disciple by an ultimate warrior of spiritual infant tier, that would only cause others to be envious, jealous, and hateful, saying that Feng Yan had some kind of luck, but Ling Han was different. A black-grade high-level alchemist could only be obtained through one's own ability, so he was definitely the real deal. Moreover, Tianyuji and the Spiritual Treasures sect had both testified that the 9 foundation building pills were concocted by Ling Han. A quasi-earth grade medicinal pill, and its quality had even reached a shocking 13 stars. What kind of concept was this? Ling Han will definitely become an earth-grade alchemist. Rain Country had never produced an earth-grade alchemist before, but this history was about to be changed, because as long as Ling Han did not die, then he would definitely become an earth-grade alchemist. In just a little less than half a day's time, Ling Han's courtyard had become extremely lively. Previously, everyone was still observing. After all, Ling Han was about to have a battle to the death with Feng Yan, and most people were actually more concerned about Feng Yan. After all, he was the disciple of an ultimate warrior of spiritual infant tier, and could even casually take out a decree, so who knew how many other treasures he had. But now, even if an ultimate warrior of spiritual infant tier personally came, he would have to consider whether he could make a move. After all, the identity of a quasi-earth grade alchemist was too sensitive, and the slightest move could affect the whole situation. If he provoked the colossus that was the Alchemist Society, what kind of consequences would there be? Thinking that way, everyone naturally wanted to curry favor with Ling Han and befriend him. Moreover, the news of Ling Han causing havoc at Lu Yutong's wedding had long been widely publicized, and there were even many people who came to propose marriage, wanting to marry their daughters to Ling Han. This young man not only had boundless prospects, he was also loyal, and was definitely a good son-in-law. At first, Ling Han still dealt with them, but later on, he grew impatient and closed the courtyard doors. Who dared to barge in? Black-grade high-level alchemists were big shots of alchemy in Rain Country. Previously, there had only been 2 big shots, and these 2 big shots were now led by Ling Han. However, these people were easy to dismiss. Qi Yongyi and the others came, so Ling Han could only receive them. After all, they could not become close friends with Ling Han, but they had come from De Yuan City together, and they had even gone to great lengths to rescue Ling Dongxing, so Ling Han still remembered this favor in his heart. He set up 2 tables in the courtyard to celebrate his becoming a black-grade high-level alchemist. To him, this was obviously a joke. He, the alchemy emperor, needed to celebrate for this, but he could not withstand the enthusiasm of everyone, so he could only reluctantly do it. He took out the ingredients from the Black Tower, and temporarily hired a chef from a restaurant to cook. Very soon, one delicious dish after another was cooked. This was a true delicacy. The ingredients themselves were incomparably fresh, and everyone just tasted a mouthful before fighting over it. It was a very embarrassing scene, and the chef looked very confused. One had to know that although his culinary skills were not bad, it was the first time he had fought over food. Could it be that his culinary skills had improved greatly recently, and he himself did not know it? After making the next dish, he also tasted a mouthful, and instantly, his tongue almost melted. Delicious, absolutely delicious, indescribably, unimaginably delicious. He tasted a mouthful, tasted another mouthful, and unknowingly, he actually felt half full. Only then did he suddenly realize that he had actually eaten half of this dish. After being discovered, he was naturally violently beaten, and could only continue to cook with a bloody nose and a swollen face. It's over, this taste is too fresh. Once I eat it, I can't forget it. After eating it, I still want to eat it. What will I do in the future? Someone cried out. That's right, this is not the chef's skill, but the ingredients themselves are too fresh. Ling Han, where did you buy it? Tell me quickly, or else I won't be able to live in the future. Tell me quickly. Everyone had forgotten that they had come to celebrate Ling Han becoming a black-grade high-level alchemist, and now only had eyes for those earthly delicacies. Ling Han only smiled. Of course, he would not say that these vegetables were grown in the Black Tower. As for chickens, pigs, and the like, because they had not been raised for long, they had not been slaughtered. Otherwise, there would be even more delicious ingredients. Halfway through the meal, Lu Yutong gracefully arrived. Thank you. She looked at Ling Han lovingly. For a man to be willing to barge into the Lu family and make a scene at the wedding for her, what kind of courage was this? Normal people would not even dare to think about it. You are my little female attendant, how could I let you marry someone you don't like? Ling Han said calmly. He had a good impression of both Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan, but it was a bit distant from the feelings between a man and a woman. After all, he had lived 2 lives, and in his previous life, he was old, at 200 years old. Although most of his time was spent on alchemy, how could his heart be so easily broken by others? Moreover, in this life, he only had eyes for martial art, so it was difficult to tug at the strings of his emotions. Lu Yutong felt as if a pail of cold water had been poured over her head, and the fire in her eyes immediately dimmed. However, she quickly reignited her fighting spirit. Since Ling Han could make a scene at the expense of his life for her, how could she shrink back? At worst, she would fight a protracted battle with Ling Han. As long as she stayed by his side, would there be a day when she would not be able to conquer his heart? Hey, little female attendant, what beautiful things are you thinking about? You're actually drooling. Just as she was daydreaming, she heard Ling Han's teasing voice ring out. Chapter 270. Qi Yongyi, Bailey Tengyun, and the others who didn't firmly support Ling Han were naturally very regretful, and continuously toasted Ling Han at the banquet, saying all sorts of nice things, wanting to mend this crack, but even if a broken mirror was mended, how could that crack disappear? What was missed in the end. Zhu Wujiu, Jin Taiji, and Li Hao were very happy. The person they followed was actually a black-grade high-level alchemist, making them feel as if they were in a dream. Such a great figure could stand shoulder to shoulder with the clan heads of the 8 great clans, and now he actually called them brothers. They didn't dare to believe it. Guang Yuan was very gloomy. This brat hid too deeply, causing his little heart to beat wildly, and he couldn't sleep well for several days. However, Ling Han gave him a cultivation technique, instantly sweeping away his gloominess. The complete Great Sun Heaven Heart Scroll, and there was even a 5th layer cultivation technique. He only had 4 layers, and they were a bit incomplete, so this was obviously an Earth-grade medium-level cultivation technique, but in his hands, it could only unleash the might of a black-grade high level. Even so, it allowed him to become a spiritual ocean tier elite ranked in the top 10 among lone cultivators. The power of Great Sun Heaven Heart Scroll was evident. Now that he obtained the complete Great Sun Heaven Heart Scroll and had the hope of reaching the spiritual pedestal tier, it instantly made his scalp tingle with excitement, and he almost cried. "Little brat, don't play like this," Guang Yuan said faintly. Because this cultivation technique was given after the banquet ended and everyone left, he wasn't afraid that his image as a spiritual ocean tier elite would be lost. Ling Han deliberately stretched out his hand, and said, "Brother Guang, if you're not satisfied, you can return the cultivation technique to me. Go, once it's in my pocket, it's mine." Guang Yuan hurriedly broke into a run as he said, "I'm going to cultivate. If you want to fight, just say it. I've decided, since I've already boarded your pirate ship, then I'll go all the way." Ling Han couldn't help but laugh in spite of himself. This Guang Yuan was quite interesting, but he was also a hot-blooded person, which was why he could pass on the Great Sun Heaven Heart Scroll without worry. As long as they could gain his trust, no one would be at a disadvantage. They would only be able to make a lot of money. He was the Alchemy Emperor. Firstly, there was no need to worry about alchemical pills, and he had once been an elite of the heaven tier, so how many cultivation techniques and martial arts techniques had he memorized? Any one of them would be enough to make spiritual infant tier elites fight to the death for it. One night passed, and early the next morning, the first Imperial Prince and the third Imperial Prince came to visit him, wanting to repair their relationship. However, how could Ling Han care about them? What he hated the most were those so-called friends. They were obviously dragging you down, but they insisted that it was for your own good. He would never give face to such a person and directly take him away. The eldest Imperial Prince and the third Imperial Prince both left in anger, but Ling Han had already revealed his identity as a big boss of alchemy. So what if they were displeased? Would they dare to be rude to such an existence? Putting aside the fact that they were only Imperial Princes now, even if they ascended to the throne and became emperors, they would still have to be polite to Ling Han. The 7th prince did not come over. He was now sitting on the fishing platform, so he was naturally not anxious. Time passed day by day. Ling Han applied the 100 poison jade ointment on his body every day, quickly increasing his cultivation level. The benefit of this ointment was not only that his cultivation level would increase quickly, but also that its side effects were small. It was not like taking the 4 transformations pill, which would leave behind pill poison in the body. After taking it for a while, he would have to stop and wait for the pill poison in the body to be expelled before continuing to take it. Another 2 days later, there was a considerable commotion in the Black Tower. Niu had broken through. Gushing spring tear. Niu can help Ling Han now. After coming out from the Black Tower, she threw herself into Ling Han's arms, and said proudly, Niu is so awesome." Ling Han laughed loudly, patting her head, then thought for a moment, and said, "Come, let's spar and see how strong you are." The two of them re-entered the Black Tower. This was a world of its own, and no matter how fierce their battle was, they would not have to worry about being discovered by outsiders. Moreover, this place was large and sturdy enough. Putting aside the fact that they were only in the Gushing Spring tier, even if they reached the Shattering Void tier, they would not have to worry about destroying the Black Tower. Once Niu moved, she immediately showed her ferocious side, and every move she made was extremely fierce. Not only that, she seemed to have the ability to teleport a short distance. The distance was really not much, only about an inch or so, but in battle, the slightest difference could lead to a loss of 1,000 miles. This kind of ability was very effective, and also very terrifying. If it was not for the fact that they were in the Black Tower, Even if Ling Han was a god, he would not be able to capture Hunyo's teleportation, because the little girl's speed was too fast, creating an afterimage that could not be detected at all. Fighting with Ling Han in the Black Tower, even a shattering void tier elite would have to kneel, so this was obviously unfair. Ling Han only defended, and allowed Hunyo to attack as she pleased, to evaluate the little girl's battle prowess. The result shocked him. The little girl's battle prowess was conservatively estimated to be at least 9 stars. When he was in the first layer of the Gushing Spring tier, he only had battle prowess of 9 stars or 10 stars, and Hunyo could actually match him. The little girl's battle prowess was so terrifying mainly because of 2 points, speed and teleportation. Of course, her claws were very sharp, enough to tear through the defense of the 9th layer of the Gushing Spring tier. Otherwise, being able to hit but not wound someone would be useless. The source of all this should be the human-shaped spirit base in Hunyo's dantian. That was too strange, and now that he thought about it, even Ling Han felt a chill run down his spine. And as Hunyo advanced into the Gushing Spring tier, Ling Han could only faintly sense the little girl's presence, which became more and more difficult to grasp. One had to know that he had the divine sense of a heaven tier elite, and his perception definitely did not lose to a real heaven tier elite, but even he was almost unable to see through Hunyo. What kind of concept was that? He believed that as long as Hunyo advanced into the spiritual ocean tier, then he would definitely not be able to surpass the little girl's cultivation level. There are too many monsters in this life, Ling Han concluded. It had not even been a year since he had been reborn, but first, he had come across the corpse of an elite of the Shattering Void tier, and then a living, incomplete immortal spirit directly appeared. The 1,000 corpse sect that had disappeared for innumerable years appeared again, and there was also Yen Tian Zhao. That evil aura made him feel a little annoyed, and even uneasy. In comparison, Feng Yan was a small matter, and he was a relatively normal breed at that. Forget it, I won't think about it anymore. No matter how strong he is, he's not as powerful as the Black Tower. If he provokes me, I'll suppress him completely. Ling Han did not think about it anymore, and continued to cultivate diligently. On the day of the martial arts tournament, he would publicly beat up Feng Yan. The days passed one after another, and the Rain Emperor's 60th birthday drew closer and closer. Not only did the various kings come in person or send their representatives to congratulate him, even the other 8 great nations sent their important envoys with congratulatory gifts. The imperial city was bustling with activity, comparable to when it was the new year. Every household was decorated with lanterns and streamers. And it was at this moment that the Qin clan finally could not hold on any longer, and surrendered. The Earth and Water faction smashed the shops of the Qin clan every day, and added with the fact that Ling Han did not hesitate to lose money, the Qin clan's source of income was suddenly cut off. In the past month or so, they were almost in desperate straits. At first, the Qin clan wanted to use Sun Ziyan's identity to hang on, but as the news that Ling Han had become a black-grade high-level alchemist spread, an important figure of the Sun clan directly stepped out and told Sun Ziyan to divorce that woman from the Qin clan. In this way, the Qin clan lost their last straw of hope. Qin Yunxiang died from overflowing, and ended his ugly life. Ling Han did not expand his attack, and decided to put an end to this matter. Chapter 271. Zi Shuxian was engaged in a fierce battle with the 3 old men. Ling Han was extremely shocked. Zi Shuxian was indeed a peerless genius. Though she was fighting 1 against 3, she actually had the upper hand. This was really something that would make one clasp one's head and exclaim in shock. A Shattering Void tier cultivator facing 3 immortals was actually able to gain the upper hand, but that was the truth. Who asked this to be the vast lands, where the cultivation of immortals was suppressed? And in a battle of the same cultivation level, the ability of a peerless genius to surpass her cultivation level in battle would be displayed to the fullest. However, immortals were immortals, after all. Their power was suppressed, but their power was endless. As long as the battle was dragged out long enough, then Zi Shuexian's power would definitely be exhausted, and she would be captured by them. And that was indeed what the three old men were doing. They were only continuously exhausting Zi Shuexian's power, neither too fast nor too slow. Zi Shuexian shouted repeatedly. Chi, chi, chi. The thunder battle armor on her body emitted a blazing white lightning, which turned into multiple lightning dragons that pounced towards the three old men to bite. This was obviously a powerful move, and instantly forced the three old men into a fluster. They had to expend a great deal of effort to destroy these lightning dragons, and Zi Shuexian took the opportunity to escape from the battle. However, not long after, she was once again caught up to, and a fierce battle once again unfolded. Ling Han bared his teeth. So the thunder battle armor was actually a level 10 spirit tool. Otherwise, how could it possibly cause trouble for the three immortals? Their power was suppressed, but that was still the battle prowess of the Shattering Void tier. A Heaven tier cultivator would be able to crush it with just a few punches and kicks. Previously, Zi Shuexian could only rank 4th among the 7 great elites of the Heaven tier. Was this because she had deliberately hidden her strength, or was it because the Sword Emperor and the others similarly had a level 10 spirit tool in their hands, which could suppress the thunder battle armor? Ling Han sighed. At that time, he had been completely focused on alchemy, and did not take the ranking of martial arts to heart at all. He only thought that if he could reach the Shattering Void tier, he would be able to push open the doors to the immortal realm and suppress the bandit that was the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. He was completely unaware of how wide the gap between him and these 6 people was. Now, he was very clear that he possessed battle prowess that could surpass a dozen or so stars, and the installation of power from the Black Tower could further increase his power by a whole major tier. This kind of battle prowess was practically nature-defying. Thus, in his last life, he did not have any trump cards in the field of martial arts, yet he was actually able to rank 7th in the world, and sit on the same level as the Sword Emperor and the others. Now that he thought about it, he felt a little embarrassed. Fuck, a real man does not boast about his past achievements. If I could meet the Sword Emperor and the others again, would definitely give them a good thrashing. Who asked me to spend all my energy on alchemy in my last life? In terms of my achievements in alchemy, even the Sword Emperor, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, and Na Lan too would have to obediently call me Grandmaster, and beg me to concoct alchemical pills for them. Ling Han gave himself a thumbs up in his mind, and continued on. In truth, though the battle was fierce, it was only a continuous repetition. Zi Shuexian could always rely on the thunder battle armor to turn the tables in a desperate situation. With a single strike, she would cause the 3 old men to be flustered, and she would take the opportunity to charge out, causing Ling Han to feel slightly bored. However, the things recorded in the memory crystal could only be played according to a fixed process. There was no way to fast forward, pause, slow down, or rewind. Thus, Ling Han could only watch quietly. But after fighting for a very long time, not only was Ling Han tired of it, the 3 old men had also had enough. With the protection of the thunder battle armor, if we continue to fight like this, we will not be able to defeat her at all, the old man on the left said. Indeed. The old man on the right nodded. The old man in the middle thought for a moment, then said, then I will use a sliver of divine power to break through the thunder battle armor. Then the regulations of this realm will immediately react, and expel you from this realm. It is even possible that you will be severely injured, the old man on the left said with a frown. We can't worry about that anymore. If we allow her to leak the secret, the people of this realm will be prepared, and it might destroy the plan that the clan has been working on for 10,000 years. Furthermore, if the matter is ruined on our side, the other clans will definitely seek trouble with us, the old man in the middle said. Fine, then you be careful. The old man on the left nodded. Don't worry, I will control my power. I only need to break through the thunder battle armor, and the backlash from the power of the realm will not be too serious. The expression of the old man in the middle was cold. Flashes of white lightning floated out of his blazing white eyes, and the aura of his whole person suddenly rose madly. In that instant, his power had completely surpassed the shattering void tier. Immortal level. This was the power of immortals. In comparison, the power of the heaven tier in his last life was like a drop of water compared to the ocean. It was completely not qualified to be mentioned in the same breath. Furthermore, this kind of power had far surpassed that of the Azura demon emperor of that time. The other two old men shot away at the same time, as if they would be implicated if they stood there. Their reaction was correct. A crack in the void soundlessly appeared behind the old man in the middle, and immediately turned into a gigantic mouth. It suddenly opened and closed, and swallowed the old man in the middle. Was this the power of the realm repelling him? It had directly sent him out of the vast lands. Ling Han was delighted. The old man's attack had not even been unleashed when he was repelled by the power of the realm. Zi Shuxian had one less powerful enemy, and should have a sliver of a chance of victory. However, he had not even finished thinking about it. Xiao, in the instant that the crack closed, a blazing white spear of lightning shot out. This was different from the previous attack. The power of this spear of lightning was at least 100 times stronger, and what was more frightening was that there were multiple patterns entwined on the spear of lightning, and the pressure it exuded would cause even shattering void tier elites to tremble in fear. This was the most frightening attack of an immortal. It was not power, but martial intent, a martial intent that could completely suppress one's martial intent. Ling Han's expression changed. That old man had still managed to unleash an attack at the last moment before he was repelled by the power of the realm. This was too frightening. Pooh! There was absolutely no chance for Zi Shuxian to dodge or parry. This spear directly pierced through her delicate body. So what if it was the thunder battle armor? A hole was directly pierced through. Ling Han finally understood. So this was how the hole on the thunder battle armor had come about. Ah! Zi Shuxian screamed. She had been struck right in the heart. This spear of lightning had directly pierced through her chest, and her heart had definitely exploded. Even if she was in the shattering void tier, she should not be able to survive. Ling Han could not help but feel his heart tighten. Could it be that Zi Shuxian was going to die? Xiao! But Zi Shuxian, on the other hand, was running madly with all her might. As she took off the thunder battle armor, she said, "The boundless mountain, the clear harmony palace hall, has all the answers. People of the future, the things that you have been told in the past were all lies. The real answer is there, and you must obtain it. Otherwise, the disaster will repeat itself." With a flick of her hand, the thunder battle armor instantly pierced through the air and left. Her figure also became smaller and smaller below, and very soon, she had disappeared completely. Obviously, the memory crystal was on the thunder battle armor. The thunder battle armor traversed an immeasurable distance, and finally landed on the ground. Every single pattern on it had lost its luster, as if it had become the most ordinary of battle armor. This kind of motionless state continued for about a few days, and then the scene suddenly stopped. It should be that the capacity of the memory crystal was limited, and it was full. Ling Han's divine sense automatically left the memory crystal, and appeared inside the Black Tower. As the ruler of this place, he could clearly determine that not even a breath's time had passed. Things that happened in divine sense did not have the temporal nature of reality. It was like a dream. In the dream, it was a lifetime, but when he woke up, only a few hours had passed. Innumerable guesses rose up in Ling Han's mind, and there was also a kind of coldness that spread from the bottom of his heart. Chapter 272. Lu Yutong also stepped forward to register. Ken Yi and Zhao Huan also stepped forward. Huyang University still had quite a number of gushing spring-tier martial artists. The temptation of a mystical power was so great that as long as there was a sliver of hope, anyone would want to try. Moreover, If anyone had unparalleled speed, they would definitely be able to surpass everyone else, so it didn't matter if their battle prowess was slightly weaker. Ling Han arrived at Sun Ziyan. The latter forced out a smile at him and immediately turned to leave. Once upon a time, Sun Ziyan did not take Ling Han seriously, but after only 1 or 2 months, he had to respectfully address Ling Han as Grandmaster. This contrast was so great that he had no face to speak to Ling Han. Ling Han smiled. He naturally would not lower himself to Sun Ziyan's level, but if the latter did not know what was good for him, then he would just casually step on him. Feng Yan is here. No one knew who said this, but everyone turned their heads to look at him. As expected, Feng Yan was striding over. As his foot landed, a silver talisman of light appeared. With every step he took, it was as if he was a divine being. Spiritual Ocean Tier, someone exclaimed. Spiritual Ocean Tier martial artists could release their own will of martial art, either imprinting it on weapons to form spirit tools, or drawing it on talisman paper to form spirit talismans. For martial artists, this was an extremely important step. In Rain Country, there were many Gushing Spring Tier martial artists, and all the great clans had no lack of such martial artists. However, the number of martial artists in Spiritual Ocean Tier was pitifully small, and further up, there were only a few martial artists in Spiritual Pedestal Tier. As a result, Spiritual Ocean Tier martial artists were the true mainstay of Rain Country, and even the 9 nations of the desolate north, and could be called a powerful warrior. Feng Yan was only 24 years old, yet he had shockingly reached Spiritual Ocean Tier. This was extremely shocking, and in the history of Rain Country, he could definitely be ranked in the top 10, or even higher. However, although Spiritual Ocean Tier martial artists could release their will of martial art, it would consume origin power. Who would do that for no reason? Feng Yan purposely arrived late, obviously to express his attitude. Rain Emperor did not take him seriously, and to release his will of martial art the moment he arrived was to show his strength, and to make Ling Han lose face. Spiritual Ocean Tier against Gushing Spring Tier, wasn't this an absolute suppression? The divine ability was his, and whether he could kill or heavily injure Ling Han depended on his mood. As expected, aside from Ling Han and Hun Yo, all the participants' expressions changed drastically. Facing a powerful warrior of Spiritual Ocean Tier, which Gushing Spring Tier cultivator would still have the courage to fight? Ling Han, Feng Yan's gaze pressed over, I really did not think that you would actually become a black-grade high-level alchemist. For the sake of the Alchemist Society, I will not kill you. I'll just cut off your 2 legs. In any case, alchemy only requires hands. His words caused an uproar among the crowd. In all of Rain Country, there was probably only Feng Yan who would dare to threaten a black-grade high-level alchemist in such a manner. Even the Rain Emperor had to be polite to this kind of big boss of alchemy. Arrogant, indeed arrogant. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, I once cut off both of your brother's arms. As his elder brother, how can you be an exception? In that case, just cut off both your hands and legs. Who? Everyone wiped off their cold sweat. These 2 people were indeed aggressive. The first thing they did was threaten to cripple the other party. Ha 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 ha. Feng Yan laughed loudly, and said darkly, you are only a mere Gushing Spring Tier martial artist, so how can you possibly fight against me? Today, I will definitely cripple you. Why do you have so much nonsense to say? Are you a chatterbox? Ling Han said disdainfully. Feng Yan was not angered, however. He retracted his will of martial art. He would not be able to continue maintaining this kind of state. A cold smirk appeared at the corners of his lips. Today, he would obtain a mystical power, and then cripple Ling Han's 2 legs to collect some interest. And in the future, he would still kill Ling Han. In any case, it would be fine as long as no one knew about it. His identity as an alchemist only made it so that no one would dare to publicly kill Ling Han. His name would spread far and wide, and not only would Ling Han have to swallow the bitter pill, his 2 legs would also be crippled. Even if they could be reattached, his agility in the future would be greatly reduced, and his path of martial art would be bleak. After Feng Yan arrived, no one else signed up, as they were all frightened by his ferocious might. Spiritual Ocean Tear, invincible. But it just so happened that at this moment, a short and small youth walked out, a bashful smile on his face, and said, "I want to sign up." Ling Han's eyes narrowed slightly. Yan Tianzhao. The first time he met Yan Tianzhao, this youth gave him an incomparably evil feeling, and the second time, the evil aura was still there, but Ling Han was already unable to see through him. And this was the third time, and Ling Han still did not see through him, as if there was a layer of fog around this person, like a tigress. Hold on. A thought suddenly flashed through Ling Han's mind. Could it be? Who are you? Report your name, age, and display your cultivation level. Zai Xiang was businesslike, his voice cold and indifferent. Yan Tianzhao, 15 years old. This youth had a bashful look. Cultivation, huh? He stretched out his right hand, and when, a green light flashed, forming a strange pattern under his palm. This, everyone stood up with a leap. This was the will of martial art. Spiritual Ocean Tear. Wipe, wipe, wipe. Heavens, another spiritual ocean tear, and he's only 15 years old. Holy shit, I originally thought a 24 years old spiritual ocean tear was already a miracle, at least not appearing in Rain Country in the past 300 years. Who knew that before the shock passed, another 15 years old spiritual ocean tear appeared? This youth's appearance definitely does not exceed 20 years old. Even a 20-year-old spiritual ocean tear martial artist would be unbelievable. This is also someone from Rain Country. Yan Tianzhao, who knows which clan's prodigy is from. Not to mention that everyone's jaws almost dropped from shock, even the Rain Emperor straightened his back slightly, and sat up straight from his throne. The imperial city actually had such a prodigy of martial art. The envoys of the 8 nations were also dumbfounded, and were extremely wary. The youngsters of this generation of Rain Country were too fierce, weren't they? A 17-year-old big boss appeared in Alchemy, and 2 spiritual ocean tier martial artists appeared in martial art one after another. Were they going to leave everyone else in the dust and crush the 8 nations? Yan Tianzhao turned around, and glanced at both Ling Han and Feng Yan. The childishness and shyness on his face were completely swept away, and he exuded the unique aura of a powerful warrior, domineering and evil. Feng Yan immediately revealed a cautious expression. He was proud, but not stupid. Even if Yan Tianzhao had just broken through to spiritual ocean tier, he did not have any advantage in terms of cultivation level. Moreover, he was only 15 years old. A 15-year-old spiritual ocean tier martial artist was unheard of, and he did not even dare to think about it. Meanwhile, Ling Han sighed internally. As expected, a monster had appeared by his side again. Compared to Azura Demon Emperor, the small Yan Tianzhao was no longer a threat to him. Rong Huanxian was the opponent he was most wary of now. Very soon, Yan Tianzhao's information was dug out. The only son of Lady Yan of Cherishing Flower Pavilion, and he had once been in a coma for as long as 10 years. A youth who had been in a coma for as long as 10 years actually broke through to spiritual ocean tier upon waking up. Fuck, I also want to sleep like this for 10 years. This time, things were going to be interesting. Originally, Feng Yan was the only outstanding individual, but now it became a battle between a tiger and a dragon. Ling Han smiled, but did not say anything. There was still him and Hunyo. It was more refreshing to read on his phone. Chapter 273. Originally, when Feng Yan appeared with his cultivation of spiritual ocean tier, he was like an unparalleled god of war, standing alone and overshadowing all the youngsters present. Though Ling Han was also brilliant, it was because of his achievements in alchemy. His cultivation of first layer of gushing spring tear was not eye-catching among the younger generation of Rain Country. But when Yan Tianzhao appeared, Feng Yan's glory was instantly stolen away. A 15-year-old spiritual ocean tear was even more shocking. But that was fine as well. What was the point of outshining others? There was more competition. Feng Yan stared at Yan Tianzhao and felt slightly troubled. Because he had to stop Yan Tianzhao from being the first to reach the peak, and also cripple Ling Han's legs. The difficulty instantly increased greatly. Yan Tianzhao stood to one side, an evil smile on his lips. That expression was completely unlike that of a 15-year-old youngster. Lu Yutong was dumbfounded. She had seen the shy and weak Yan Tianzhao with her own eyes. She had never thought that this youngster could actually grow to spiritual ocean tear in a short 1 or 2 months, and that evil aura was enough to make one's hair stand on end. Everyone was making their final preparations, waiting for the battle to begin. After another half an hour, the Rain Emperor nodded, and said, "Prepare to begin." Xie Chang stood up, and said, "We will now end the registration. The rules of the competition are as follows: no spirit tools, no alchemical pills, no spirit talismans, and no decrees. In other words, you can only use your own strength. In principle, no one is allowed to be injured, but weapons have no eyes, so it is unavoidable if something happens. So, if you don't want to be injured, it is still not too late to back out. If there is anyone who is not clear on this, speak up immediately." When he said this, no one made a sound. "Then, I will count to 3, and everyone will set off together. 1, 2, 3. The third count had just sounded when shio, 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 everyone rushed out. Over 100 people formed a circle at the foot of the mountain. Because there were 32 paths at the start, they naturally had to avoid strong opponents as much as possible. And every path was extremely narrow, only allowing one person to pass through at a time. So, if they wanted to rush to the front, they could only first send the person in front flying. For a moment, it was like a thirsty horse drinking spring water. The scene was very intense. Xiao, a petite figure, could be seen galloping away, and with a speed that left everyone speechless, she was the first to reach the foot of the mountain, directly shaking off the second person by more than half the distance, and began to climb the mountain. It was Hunyo. Puff! Everyone choked on their saliva as 10,000 alpacas galloped past their hearts. Previously, when Feng Yan appeared with the cultivation of the spiritual ocean tear, everyone was greatly shocked, thinking that the first place this time would definitely be Feng Yan. And when Yan Tianzhao similarly revealed his spiritual ocean tear cultivation, everyone guessed that the first place would be fought over between Feng Yan and Yan Tianzhao. But as soon as the match began, there was no suspense. It was absolutely one-sided, and an accident occurred. A little girl that he thought was just playing around actually rushed out at a speed that he could only look up to. She was so fast that he couldn't even stop her. No wonder the Rain Emperor allowed Hunyo to participate in the tournament. The little girl was definitely in gushing spring tear. Damn, a 5 or 6-year-old in gushing spring tear. Everyone was so shocked that their faces twitched. What kind of concept was this? When they were 5 or 6 years old, most people were still playing in the mud. Generally speaking, awakening their spirit base would only happen after they were at least 10 years old, but this little girl was shockingly already in the gushing spring tear. Moreover, her speed was so fast that even Feng Yan and Yan Tianzhao could only watch as she passed. The envoys of the 8 nations looked at each other, and could feel the others' mouths open wide enough to fit 3 eggs. Did Rain Country specialize in producing monsters recently? Feng Yan and Yan Tianzhao both made their moves. One shot out a silver saber, while the other shot out a green mist, but neither attack could catch up to Hunyo. When everyone ran to the foot of the mountain, Hunyo had already arrived at the summit. Fuck, what was there to compete for? The competition had not even begun, and it was already over. Wahaha! Hunyo suddenly stopped, turned around, and put her hands on her hips, revealing a fierce expression, and said loudly, "This path is opened by Niu, and aside from Ling Han, no one else is allowed to pass." Pooh! Everyone choked again, but this time it was not shock, but laughter. Feng Yan and the others were slightly startled, and then hurriedly broke into a run. Since Hunyo did not intend to be the first person to reach the summit, and wanted to leave this chance to Ling Han, then what need was there for them to be polite? The others managed to enter 32 paths, and began the first round of competition. Peng, 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 everyone moved. If they wanted to be in front, then they had to kill the person in front. This was equivalent to a single log bridge, and could not allow two people to cross it. In the blink of an eye, dozens of people had been eliminated. Their bodies were sent flying, and only 32 people continued to advance. However, the single log bridge very quickly merged into two, and became 16 paths. Another 16 people were mercilessly eliminated, their bodies sent flying, and they fell from the skies. Then, 16 to 8. Only 8 people remained. Aside from Feng Yan and Yan Tianzhao, the two publicly acknowledged favorites, there was also Ling Han, Zhao Huan, Ken Yi, Lu Yutong, Huang Zitao, and Qian Wuyong. The third imperial prince did not participate due to his status, and the eldest imperial prince was too old, so he could not participate. Ling Han actually managed to fight his way out, which caused many people to be confused. Wasn't this guy only in the first layer of Gushing Spring tier? Putting aside the fact that he was not a match for Feng Yan and Yan Tianzhao, he was at the bottom of Gushing Spring tier, so how could he be so fierce? After all, there were not many who had seen Ling Han and Feng Yan battle at the Lu family. Otherwise, everyone would not be so shocked. Ling Han was also a fierce person, all right? Feng Yan and Yan Tianzhao had a tacit understanding. They each took one side, so they would only meet when the two of them merged into one path, so as to avoid colliding too early and both being eliminated. Feng Yan's next opponent was Huang Zitao. Without any suspense, he sent Huang Zitao flying with a single punch, and entered the fourth path. Yan Tianzhao's opponent was Lu Yutong. With a light wave of his hand, he said, "Sister Yutong, sorry for the offense." Then, he sent Lu Yutong flying. Can you face Qian Wuyong? With a sweep of his saber, 5 flashes of saber chi shot out. Qian Wuyong only gave a muffled grunt, and a spurt of blood shot out from his chest. He had already been sent flying. Finally, Ling Han faced Zhao Huan. Zhao Huan was one of the 3 core disciples of Huyang Academy, and ranked second, which was even higher than Ken Yi. It was said that when he was born, there was a strange phenomenon, and golden light illuminated half of the imperial city. Whether this was true or not was another matter, but the current Zhao Huan indeed had a shocking presence. His eyes were like a dragon's, and he was very domineering. He laughed loudly, and said, "Grandmaster Ling, sorry for the offense." His fist shot out, and his fist was wrapped in golden light. Like a shooting star, it shot towards Ling Han, wanting to snatch the fourth path. Not necessarily. Ling Han similarly shot out a fist, and without any fancy moves, it met Zhao Huan's fist head-on. Pang! A heavy sound rang out, and the whole small mountain began to tremble. Zhao Huan had already been sent flying. So far. Someone gazed into the distance, and Zhao Huan had already turned into a small black dot. In an instant, he was already 300 meters away. Ling Han snatched the last spot in the fourth path. Chapter 274. Now, there were only 4-2 and 2-1 remaining on the small mountain. Theoretically, he only needed to defeat 2 more people to reach the top. Of course, there was still a tigress who didn't play by the rules, attacking from a higher place. However, speed didn't equate to battle prowess. Once they fought at close range, the advantage of speed would be greatly reduced. Among the 5 people, who would be first in the end. Next, Yan Tianzhao against Qin Yi, Feng Yan against Ling Han. Go! Yan Tianzhao moved. With a flick of his sleeve, shio, 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 7 battle spears shot out. They were condensed from origin power, completely black, and there were patterns formed by the will of martial art on the spears. Qin Yi didn't dare to be careless. There was a gap of a major tier, and this was a crushing gap. He swung his saber and unleashed his full strength without reservation. Saber light shone brilliantly, and 5 flashes of saber chi shone brightly. Honestly speaking, 5 flashes of saber chi was extremely powerful. Before Ling Han had discussed the art of the sword with Mo Gao, he had only managed to form 5 flashes of saber chi, and this was still based on his understanding of martial arts in his last life. However, the spiritual ocean tier was too strong, and Yan Tianzhao was obviously a genius whose battle prowess surpassed his cultivation level. Qin Yi used his full strength. Ding, 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 he barely shattered 3 battle spears, but there were still 4 that he couldn't dispel no matter what. Pu, piu, 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 he was instantly pierced through by the 4 battle spears, and his body was sent flying. Fortunately, Yan Tianzhao obviously knew when to stop. These 4 battle spears pierced through his shoulders and the base of his thighs, avoiding his vital points. Otherwise, with the Rain Emperor sitting on the top of the mountain, if he attacked, the world would definitely change. The 4 battle spears contained Yan Tianzhao's will of martial art, so although the origin power spears disappeared as soon as they entered his body, under the suppression of the will of martial art, Qin Yi couldn't move. With a pang, he fell heavily onto the ground. Hang! A figure shot out and carried Qin Yi back. It was Lian Guangzhu. He looked at Ling Han, Feng Yan, and Yan Tianzhao on the top of the mountain with a complicated expression, but he sighed and withdrew his gaze to treat Qin Ye's wounds. Qin Ye's body trembled, and he clenched one hand tightly, biting his lip until it bled. Don't be sad. Losing to a Sea of Souls realm warrior is not a shame. Lian Guangzhu comforted his only disciple. Qin Yi didn't try to console him because of this, and instead looked at Ling Han and said, "He's stronger than me." At the peak of the mountain, Ling Han was currently engaged in a fierce battle with Feng Yan. "Ha ha ha, have you come to your senses?" Feng Yan laughed coldly. "I am now in the spiritual ocean tier, how are you going to block me?" He shot out a punch, and 9 long sabers appeared, and together with his fist, they shot towards Ling Han. These 9 long sabers were naturally condensed from origin energy. The will of martial art shone resplendently and transformed into vein-like patterns that resembled heavenly sabers. Ling Han laughed heartily as he slashed out with his sword, displaying the 4 seasons sword art. One move had 4 styles: winter, summer, autumn, and winter. The 4 different artistic conceptions swirled around, forming a continuous stream of sword intent that contained boundless might. Peng, 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 peng. The 9 sabers were instantly shattered, and Ling Han's 4 seasons sword technique was also destroyed. This was precisely the scene that Qin Yi had anticipated, and he was unable to accept it. Not long ago, he could still slice Ling Han in half with a single strike, but Ling Han had managed to escape with his life because of a trick. But how long had it been? Now, Ling Han was able to dispel the attack of a spiritual ocean tier elite, and he was defeated in a single strike. The gap between the 2 of them was indescribably large. These 3 people are real monsters. You don't have to follow them, just maintain a normal state of mind, Lian Guangzhu advised. At the same time, he felt that it was a great pity, because he had wanted to take Ling Han as his disciple in the past, but very soon, the incident with Feng Yan happened, and he was completely pushed to the opposite side. No one knew that Lian Guangzhu had once stayed in the Winter Moon sect, and had even received the guidance of an elite, which was why he had the achievements he had now. And that elite was precisely Feng Yan's master. Thus, Lian Guangzhu would satisfy Feng Yan's request, just to repay his kindness. Yet an even stronger fighting spirit flashed in Qin Ye's eyes. he would definitely not admit defeat. He wanted to walk to the pinnacle of the path of the saber. In Rain Country, his achievements were limited, so he wanted to go out and temper his saber techniques in a wider world. Either he would become a grandmaster of saber techniques, or he would die on this path. Heng. Feng Yan's attack had failed, and he had originally wanted to attack again, but when he saw that Yan Tianzhao had already sent his opponent flying and continued up the mountain, he could only ignore Ling Han for now and chase after Yan Tianzhao. He shot out a punch, and another 9 flashes of saber shot out. Yan Tianzhao did not dare to underestimate Feng Yan's attack. He could only turn around, and with a flick of his sleeve, similarly shot out 9 spears. Peng, 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 the spears and sabers collided, and both were destroyed. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Feng Yan also charged over and stopped Yan Tianzhao from continuing to advance. Hunyo did not need to worry about her anyway. If she wanted to get first place, the others would have long since gone to bed. Ling Han gave a long whistle, and charged into the fray with his sword in hand. Hung, 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 the 3 of them engaged in a chaotic battle. These 3 people were all acting on their own, and it was impossible for any 2 of them to join forces. Thus, the moment they attacked the other 2 people at the same time, causing the scene to become incredibly chaotic. Yan Tianzhao and Feng Yan were both in the spiritual ocean tier, and when they attacked, there was the will of martial arts circulating around them, and the power was astonishing. However, Ling Han was only in the first layer of gushing spring tier, but his battle prowess was actually only slightly weaker. Neither Feng Yan nor Yan Tianzhao dared to underestimate him. This caused everyone's jaws to drop, and they felt as if their outlook on life was about to collapse. After a 24-year-old spiritual ocean tier, there appeared a 15-year-old spiritual ocean tier, and then there appeared a 5 or 6-year-old gushing spring tier martial artist, which once again shocked everyone's fragile hearts. Then, this 5 or 6-year-old gushing spring tier martial artist exploded with a speed that even spiritual ocean tier martial artists could only stare in shock. It was practically terrifying. Now, there appeared another freak in gushing spring tier, and with the power of only the first layer, he was able to fight against a spiritual ocean tier martial artist. This made everyone feel as if they were dreaming. Was this still the martial art world that they knew? Peng, 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 the 3 of them battled chaotically, and under the restraint of each other, it was impossible to determine who would emerge victorious in a short period of time. In terms of battle prowess, Yan Tianzhao should be the first, because his cultivation level was the highest, reaching the 3rd layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Next was Feng Yan, who was in the 1st layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Last was Ling Han, who appeared to be in the 1st layer of the gushing spring tier, but was actually in the 8th layer of the gushing spring tier, and his power was infinitely close to the spiritual ocean tier. However, because one side was slightly stronger, he would naturally receive a stronger attack from the other 2, and naturally would not be able to gain the upper hand, causing the battle to remain in a stalemate. However, there was also a possibility that the balance would be broken in an instant, because none of the 3 of them were displaying their strongest battle prowess. If one of them suddenly rose in revolt and exploded with a powerful attack, he might be able to directly send the other 2 flying, and thus obtain victory in a single move. If he managed to arrive in front of the Rain Emperor first, he would win. However, at this point, the thoughts of the 3 had changed. Defeat the other 2, and become the first. They were all extremely arrogant, and when facing a strong opponent, their first thought was to win, and not to retreat. Otherwise, if they lost their invincible heart, what difference would there be between them and normal geniuses? Heng. Feng Yan was the first to reveal his trump card, and flashes of silver light flickered on his body. He activated the physique of mirror light body. Chapter 275. Duan Zhengji. Guang Yuan's eyes were almost bulging out of their sockets. He clashed fiercely with that corpse soldier, wanting to chase away this obstacle in his way and catch up to Duanjing Ji to demand justice from him. However, the corpse soldier was unafraid of death and pain. It did not yield an inch, and battled fiercely with him. Strange, Duanjing Ji left just like that. Yu Kaiyu was surprised. If an ultimate warrior of spiritual pedestal tier made a move, then it would definitely be a piece of cake for him to take down the three of them in spiritual ocean tier. Ling Han smiled and said, Duanjing Ji should have full confidence that he would not deign to make a move. Now that we are surrounded, you can still smile. Yu Kaiyu said, gritting his teeth. Then what kind of expression do you want me to give you? Ling Han laughed loudly, and said heroically, don't worry, since I have brought you guys out, I will also bring you guys back. I hope it's not 3 corpses, Yu Kaiyu said with a sigh. It's not 3 corpses, but 3 corpse soldiers. A voice was heard from outside the door, but it was not Duanjing Ji, but belonged to another man. There's someone else. Yu Kaiyu's expression changed. Ling Han rolled his eyes at him, and said, isn't this nonsense? How many people are there in the entire Duan residence? If they were all corpse soldiers, then wouldn't they have all been exposed during the day? They are the true disciples of the 1,000 Corpse sect, and corpse soldiers are only tools. A young man actually knows so much about our sect. A surprised voice was heard from outside. Ling Han nodded at Yu Kaiyu, and said, you go and help big brother Guang Yuan. Let's fight our way out. Yu Kaiyu nodded, and immediately leaped over Guang Yuan's head, charging towards that corpse soldier. Just now, Guang Yuan and the corpse soldier had clashed head-on, and both of them were retreating. Now that Yu Kaiyu followed up with another attack, the corpse soldier was instantly forced to retreat again and again. Why do I have to listen to that brat's words? Yu Kaiyu scratched his head. Just now, he had not given it much thought, and had just followed Ling Han's words. Now that he thought about it, he felt gloomy. He was the senior brother here. Guang Yuan, however, took up his position and punched out again. The stone room was much bigger. After 3 punches, the corpse soldier was forced out. Ling Han and the others took advantage of the situation to rush out, but when they saw the scene outside, they could not help but grimace. There were many corpse soldiers, but there were also many people with normal appearances. Obviously, these were the disciples of the 1,000 Corpse sect, the people who controlled the corpse soldiers. That's the 3rd elder of the Zhang clan, Zhang Hu. Yu Kaiyu suddenly exclaimed, pointing at a corpse soldier. Then, he pointed at another corpse soldier. Li Ding Yi of the Li clan. He pointed at the 3rd corpse soldier. Gu Shuntong of the Gu clan. He pointed at them one by one, and at least counted the names of 10 corpse soldiers that were still alive. He could not help but look shocked, and said, you guys are really deranged. These people are already dead, and you guys still dig them out and refine them into corpse soldiers. TSK, what do you mean by deranged? Anyway, they're already dead, so wouldn't it be better to let them contribute a little more? A man close to 50 years old said. And the 3 of you, when we make our move later, will try our best to be gentle, and not damage your bodies too severely. 3 spiritual ocean tier warriors, if we're lucky, the corpse soldiers refined can also retain this kind of strength. Madmen, all madmen. Yu Kaiyu said harshly. He took out a pair of boxing gloves from his spatial ring and put them on, immediately activating them. Multiple golden patterns lit up, and his fighting spirit soared into the skies like the flames of war. Kill them. Those people of the 1,000 Corpse sect controlled the corpse soldiers, and surrounded the 3 of them. Limited by their cultivation level and the conditions for nurturing corpses, the disciples of the 1,000 Corpse sect could normally only nurture 1 corpse soldier, and a few could nurture 2. The disciples here were obviously all ordinary, and it was impossible for them to have 3 lives corpse caskets like Rong Huanxian. Thus, each of them only nurtured 1 corpse soldier. However, there were more than a dozen people here, so naturally, there were also more than a dozen corpse soldiers. Every single one of them was in the spiritual ocean tier, and was a level 1 silver-armored corpse. With absolute numbers, added with the corpse soldier's characteristic of not fearing death or injury, wouldn't it be easy to deal with 3 spiritual ocean tier warriors? Yu Kai-yu and Guang Yuan both wore stern expressions, especially Guang Yuan. He wanted to seek justice for Nong Qingyu, so he had to protect his own life even more. The weak would only wail, while the strong would speak through their fists. Corpse soldiers had no emotions, and could not speak. Under their orders, they charged towards Ling Han and the others. Yu Kai-yu and Guang Yuan immediately moved. Peng, 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 peng. They had already begun to battle with the corpse soldiers. Neither of them had any experience in battling with corpse soldiers, so they treated the corpse soldiers as if they were humans, causing them to be surrounded by danger. That was because you could land a punch on a cultivator's head and force them to retreat, but corpse soldiers did not care so much. If you wanted to fight, then just fight. I would also land a punch on your head, or a cut on your throat. If a corpse soldier was hit, the worst that could happen was that their head would be knocked crooked or knocked off. It would be fine as long as they put it back, but if a cultivator was hit by this move, would he still be alive? However, both of them had rich battle experience, and very soon, they adjusted themselves. However, they were still unable to deal with the corpse soldiers, because no matter how injured these things were, it would not affect their battle prowess. How could they fight? You two are too weak. It's been half a day, and you still haven't cleaned up these things. Ling Han sighed. It's easy for you to say that. Why don't you come and try? Yu Kai-yu said in exasperation. He and Guang Yuan each had to deal with 7 corpse soldiers, and every one of them seemed to have indestructible bodies. Being able to last until now was because of his amazing battle prowess. If he only had around 9 stars, then he would definitely have been pounced on by now. Ling Han laughed, and said, You really want me to fight? Nonsense, hurry up, I'm about to die of exhaustion, Yu Kai-yu urged. He was quite confident in Ling Han's battle prowess. Let's make a bet. In the time of 10 breaths, I can get rid of all these corpse soldiers. Ling Han was not in a hurry. Ha! Yu Kai-yu naturally did not believe him. Although he also hoped that Ling Han could show off his invincible might and solve the predicament of the 3 of them, he could barely withstand the attacks, yet Ling Han could destroy so many corpse soldiers in 10 breaths. That was obviously impossible. Bet on what? He was a careless person, and was very unconvinced. I haven't thought of it yet. In the future, do one thing for me, Ling Han said after some thought. Don't worry, it will definitely be within your ability. Alright, then hurry up. If you can really get rid of these corpse soldiers, I'll even owe you my life. Yu Kai-yu cried out strangely. The 7 corpse soldiers gave him more and more pressure. Ling Han laughed mischievously. His figure moved, and he attacked a corpse soldier. He shot out a punch, and black demonic patterns interweaved on his fist. Pang! He clashed head-on with a corpse soldier, and his whole body was instantly sent flying, showing that his strength was actually inferior to that corpse soldier's. But strangely, that corpse soldier's arm began to soften, as if it had turned into a set of withered bones, turning into dust under the corrosion of time. Chapter 276. Yan Tian Zhao pinched his nose, and mumbled, There's actually nothing for me to do anymore. He shook his head, and said, Forget it, Rain Country is only a stop for me. When I get the mystical power, I'll go to the more lively places in the North region. The level of martial art here is too low, and there are only so many geniuses, which is not beneficial for my growth. He put his hands behind his back, and walked towards the top of the mountain. This road is opened by Niu, no one is allowed to pass. Hu Niu immediately spread out her arms, looking like she was going to block him. Little girl, you're a bit strange, but you're still not my match. Step aside, I don't want to hurt you, Yan Tianzhao said calmly. It was unknown whether he was feeling compassion, or afraid of Hunyou's strangeness. Aside from Ling Han, no one is allowed to pass. Hunyou roared, and took the initiative to attack. Xiao, she was so fast that she was like a gust of wind. Many spiritual ocean tier elites would find it very hard to keep track of her, and with just a flash, the little girl had already appeared behind Yan Tianzhao. Her two small hands were raised high up, and shwa, 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 she was madly clawing. Teng, 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 Yan Tianzhao instantly staggered a few steps from the attacks, and streaks of blood gushed out from his back, showing Hunyou's terrifying destructive power. Another first layer of gushing spring tier, and could hurt a spiritual ocean tier warrior. Everyone below felt like they were dreaming. This was too surreal. When did gushing spring tier become so awesome, and it was only the first layer of gushing spring tier? Previously, everyone thought that Hunyou was purely going up to act cute, but they never thought that the tournament had just begun, and the little girl would give everyone a huge shock, exploding with a terrifying speed. But speed was only speed, and now the first layer of gushing spring tier could tear apart the defense of a spiritual ocean tier warrior. This destructive power was absolutely terrifying. Everyone moved towards Feng Yan. The wild strength berserk ape was known for its shocking destructive power, but one hit on Ling Han only caused a bit of blood to flow from the corner of his mouth, while Hunyou completely turned Yan Tianzhao's back into a bloody mess. With such a comparison, it was obvious that Hunyou was more worthy of the title of Wild Strength Berserk Ape. One was a spiritual ocean tier against a gushing spring tier, while the other was a gushing spring tier against a spiritual ocean tier, but the result was that Hunyou's destructive power was even stronger. Wasn't this obvious? Xiao, Hunyou once again launched an attack. Speed was her greatest advantage, and she came and went like the wind. When the eyes caught sight of her figure, the little girl had actually already appeared in another place, and what the eyes caught was only her afterimage. Hunyou did not have the slightest bit of mercy. Killing was her instinct, and now that it was stimulated, it was as if she had transformed into a little tiger, continuously pouncing on Yan Tianzhao. Yan Tianzhao continued to bleed profusely from his hands and feet. He had the cultivation of the spiritual ocean tier, yet he couldn't catch a glimpse of Hunyou's figure at all, and was completely useless. Everyone was shocked. In their minds, speed could only be used to escape, but the scene in front of them had toppled their beliefs. The reason they had such a thought was because their speed hadn't reached its limit yet. Who had Hunyou's speed? They could completely turn speed into their strongest battle prowess. Yan Tianzhao's expression became more and more gloomy, but the corners of his lips curled up into a smile, looking extremely sinister. A cloud of green fog actually shot out from his whole body, turning into multiple strands of silk that interweaved densely, turning the space of 10 meters around him into a spiderweb. It wasn't a flat web, but a three-dimensional web. Hunyou instantly bumped into the green web. She struggled, but discovered that although these green strands were extremely thin, their toughness was shockingly strong. No matter how much strength she used, she couldn't break free. Under my heaven and earth spiderweb, you still want to escape? Yan Tianzhao sneered. These silk strands wriggled as if they had a life of their own and a will of their own, pushing Hunyou layer by layer towards Yan Tianzhao. Hunyou panicked, and turned her head to bite. With a woo-la sound, one of the green strands was actually bitten into two. Pooh! Yan Tianzhao was so shocked that his eyeballs almost popped out. This was the heaven and earth spiderweb, his absolute trump card. As long as one was trapped by the spiderweb, then within the same cultivation level, no one would be able to break free. Its toughness was comparable to the forging materials of the same level. But this little girl actually bit through it with a single bite. What kind of fuck you teeth did she have? Thinking of how Hunyou had scratched him so many times just now, if the little girl occasionally used her mouth to bite him. Yan Tianzhao couldn't help but swallow. He stretched out his hand and wiped his throat. It was really possible that his throat would be torn apart in one bite, and he would directly die. He couldn't help but feel a strong sense of lingering fear. Killing intent blazed in his eyes, and he struck a palm strike towards Hunyo's chest. Hang! The Rain Emperor humphed lightly, his imperial might surging. Yen Tianzhao instantly felt a pain in his chest, and his heart trembled. He hurriedly retracted some of his power, and with a pang, Hunyo was sent flying. With a paw, she landed at the foot of the mountain, her small body lying there unmoving. She was only severely injured, because the Rain Emperor's humph caused Yen Tianzhao to retract most of his power. The Rain Emperor had said that this was a martial arts competition, a spar, and injuries were unavoidable, but killing was definitely not allowed. In front of the Rain Emperor, who could act violently? Ling Han was currently battling with Feng Yan, and when he saw this scene, he couldn't help but fly into a rage. Get lost! He unleashed a mighty sword strike that contained endless fury. Even Feng Yan didn't dare to take it head-on, and had no choice but to retreat. Ling Han only needed a sweep of his divine sense to know that Hunyo's life was not in danger. He also knew that with the Rain Emperor overseeing things, it was definitely impossible for any lives to be lost. But when he saw Hunyo's small body lying unmoving on the ground, and there was even a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth, it made him extremely furious, and he felt an urge to destroy the entire world. Hunyo had been injured because she had stopped Yen Tianzhao, and the little girl had naturally done this for his sake. Since his rebirth, this was the second time he had been so furious. The first time was when Ling Dongxing had been captured by the Qing family and was about to be beheaded on the streets. Yen Tianzhao! He roared loudly, shook off Feng Yan, and chased after Yen Tianzhao. Yen Tianzhao was also very displeased. He, a mighty warrior in the spiritual ocean tier, was injured all over by a little girl. Now, he had only knocked Hunyo unconscious and caused her to be slightly injured, so what was there to be angry about? Feng Yan shouted in fury, because Ling Han actually shook him off and ignored him. Moreover, this was the first time he had seen Ling Han so furious. Even when Lu Yutong had been forced to marry, he had not been like this. This obviously meant that Ling Han had only been playing around with him previously, and had not treated him as an opponent at all. Damn it, damn it, damn it! Ling Han was furious. Lu Yutong was only his little female attendant, but Hunyo was treated by him as family. Moreover, Hunyo was still so young, so she naturally received even more love from Ling Han. Even he could not bear to speak harshly to her, but now, she was actually heavily injured by Yen Tianzhao and lying on the ground. How could he not be furious? Ah! He roared in fury and drew his sword. For a moment, he had forgotten everything, and only had the thought of beheading Yen Tianzhao. Shua! 7 flashes of sword chi lit up. Chapter 277. In his rage, Ling Han finally broke through and formed the 7th flash of sword chi. Tang, 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 everyone at the foot of the mountain stood up. Whether it was saber chi or sword chi, as long as one formed chi, they had the potential to become a king. However, 3 flashes was only small success, 6 was great success, and 7 was a true king. In the history of Rain Country, there were quite a few people who had 6 flashes of chi. Although they all achieved it after 60 or 70 years old, there were still such geniuses. But 7 flashes? Absolutely unique. In the entire 9 nations of the desolate north, a saber genius did appear 700 years ago. He formed 7 flashes of saber chi and was invincible in the spiritual pedestal tier, worthy of the title of king. However, when this saber grandmaster formed the 7th flash of saber chi, he was already 62 years old. How old was this young man? A monster. A monster appeared today. However, 7 flashes of sword chi wasn't all of Ling Han's breakthroughs. In his rage, Ling Han shot out the mysterious 3000, his strongest sword move, which was very normal. However, what was unusual was that under such extreme fury, every single strand of sword chi underwent a strange change. The mysterious 3000 could instantly unleash 3000 extreme attacks. This was an absolute ultimate move, and at its highest level, it could instantly dominate the world. However, Ling Han was far from reaching such a level. He could only unleash 100 strikes. But now, 800 flashes of sword light appeared at the same time. Could it be that under his rage, his comprehension of the mysterious 3000 advanced so much? Strangely, he still only unleashed 100 flashes of sword light. That was because the 7 flashes of sword chi were splitting, 1 into 2, 2 into 3, and each flash of sword chi became 100 flashes of sword light. 800 flashes of sword light illuminated heaven and earth. What kind of concept was this? It was equivalent to 800 Ling Hans attacking at the same time, each slashing with their sword. Although this slash didn't contain any martial arts techniques, it was a full power strike. However, 800 flashes added together could still frighten people to death. Behind, Feng Yan suddenly stopped. Such a dazzling attack made even him afraid, and he didn't dare to come forward to ask for a beating. That would really be asking for trouble. Yan Tianzhao's expression changed greatly, and he hurriedly let out a loud roar. Streaks of green fog spurted out from his body, turning into a barrier that blocked between him and Ling Han. 800 sword lights arrived. Peng, the green barrier immediately shattered into countless fragments, and the sword light continued to shoot out, sending Yan Tianzhao flying. After drawing an arc in the air, he crashed heavily onto the ground. He was still alive, but his entire body was already covered in blood. His body had been torn apart to the bone, and his internal organs could even be seen in his chest. However, what was shocking was that all of his muscles were wriggling about, actually healing on their own, moreover at an astonishing speed. Ling Han was astonished. Even this didn't kill him. No wonder the Rain Emperor did not make a move. He sat down on the ground as well. Though the might of the 800 sword lights was astonishing, its consumption was also terrifying, and it actually completely emptied his origin power. This was only 800 sword lights, not the limit of 3000. No wonder he still couldn't use the second and third forms of the mystic origin sword technique. He didn't have enough origin energy. Are all the people from the heavenly sword sect freaks? Ling Han was panting heavily, while Hu Niu was unconscious, Yan Tianzhao was unconscious, and only Feng Yan still had his battle prowess intact. Ha 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 ha. Feng Yan laughed loudly, and strode over. I really never thought that I would actually obtain victory in such a way. He had already withdrawn the wild strength berserk ape bloodline, which consumed a lot of energy. Of course, the mirror light body was also withdrawn. Now that the other 3 people had already lost their battle prowess, even if his cultivation level was weakened by 100 times, he would still win. Ling Han also smiled bitterly. In his fury, he didn't consider too much at all. Moreover, even he didn't know that he could actually obtain a breakthrough in the application of the mysterious 3000, shooting out 800 flashes of sword light all at once, completely draining his origin power. One couldn't take medicine in the tournament, and taking medicine meant forfeiting. What should he do? Watch as Feng Yan ascended to the top. You've really disappointed me. I had originally wanted to defeat you when you were at your strongest, then cripple your legs and beat you from the peak of your life to the lowest point, Feng Yan said in a disappointed tone. You've really disappointed me. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said disdainfully, that strike of mine just now, you dare to receive it? Feng Yan's expression immediately tensed up. Even if he possessed dual physiques, and both were very awesome, when faced with those 800 sword lights and the extremely dazzling strike, he still felt a chill run down his spine. He reckoned that he would be able to block it, but he would also end up like Yan Tianzhao, heavily injured. The result now is that you can only look up to me, He didn't reply. There was no meaning in making assumptions. Feng Yan revealed a cold expression and raised his foot to stomp down on Ling Han. He wanted to trample on Ling Han's face in front of everyone in the world. Ling Han stretched out his hand to block, but anyone could step out, so how powerless would it be? Could it be that a dignified pseudo-earth-grade alchemist, a genius that formed 7 flashes of sword chi, was actually going to suffer such great humiliation? Everyone below felt uncomfortable, and Lu Yutong and Li Xichan were so agitated that they wanted to forfeit the tournament in place of Ling Han. Feng Yan smirked coldly, and his foot stomped down without mercy. Pa! His left foot stepped onto Ling Han's right hand, and the powerful force was like a mountain, pressing down on Ling Han's hand and stomping towards his face. But just at this moment, Feng Yan's expression changed drastically, and he suddenly let out a scream that shook the heavens and the earth. What the hell was he screaming for? He obviously had such a big advantage, and still wanted to play around. No. Everyone could clearly see that one of Feng Yan's left legs had actually been eroded, as if it was made of smoke, and would disperse with a single blow. What was going on? Ling Han revealed a proud smile. He had refined the demonic chi from cultivating a demon emperor, and in the end, he had even formed a layer of black-colored demonic patterns on his palm. This was the power of regulation, and was extremely terrifying. However, though this power was strong, because it could only be attached to the surface of his palm, it was usually not very useful. But who asked Feng Yan to actually want to step on him? That was really asking for trouble. Ah! Feng Yan roared fiercely, and forcefully chopped off his left leg. Otherwise, this erosion would continue to spread, and turn his entire person into ash. Pa! He, too, sat down on the ground. It was not just a problem of losing a leg. There was currently a terrifying force rampaging inside his body, causing him to feel extremely uncomfortable. Putting aside the need to fight, it was already extremely difficult for him to even forcibly hold back his scream. This time, none of the 4 people were still standing. No one had thought that such a turn of events would occur on the scene. They were all dumbfounded, completely unable to accept it. Shio, 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 those people who had originally been beaten down the mountain ran back one after another. The elites were either injured or lying on the ground, and wasn't this their chance? Ling Han stood up. He was not injured, and it was only his origin power that had been sucked dry. Now, though he had only recovered a little, it was completely not a problem for him to stand up and run around. He strode forward, and was already standing in front of the Rain Emperor. The victor of this martial arts contest is Ling Han. The Rain Emperor's voice, filled with authority, rang out, shaking the clouds. Chapter 278. It was over, and Ling Han obtained the final victory. This was unexpected by everyone. Hunyo had an astonishing speed, and if she won first place, though everyone would be shocked, they could still accept it. However, Ling Han actually defeated Feng Yan and Yan Tianzhao. This was something that no one could have imagined. He defeated Yan Tianzhao with a single strike, and crippled Feng Yan with a single palm strike. It was practically like a dream. The Rain Emperor looked at Ling Han, his expression calm, but no one knew what kind of turbulent waves were surging in his heart. Today, the performance of these 4 young people had completely exceeded his expectations, and he didn't even dare to think about it. In reality, among the 4 of them, only Feng Yan, who had double constitutions, was considered normal, and the other 3 could be said to be freaks. Yan Tianzhao's green fog and recovery ability, Hunyo's speed, Ling Han's sword technique, and that strange palm strike at the end, even the Rain Emperor was confused. Take it. The Rain Emperor took out a box out of thin air, and handed it over to Ling Han. Spatial ring. Ling Han was slightly surprised. He had thought that Rain Country could not possibly have a spatial ring, and had never thought that the Rain Emperor would actually have such a treasure. However, when he thought about it again, even the mystical power of the Eye of Truth appeared in the national treasury, then occasionally obtaining a spatial ring wouldn't be strange. He took the box. It wasn't big, but it wasn't convenient to stuff it into his pocket, so he could only hold it in his hand. The Rain Emperor could expose the fact that he had a spatial ring, but Ling Han didn't dare to. After all, he was too weak now, not to mention that he wasn't wearing a spatial ring on his hand, and had stored it in the Black Tower. The Rain Emperor suddenly paused slightly, and looked into the distance. Ling Han also immediately felt a powerful presence, and similarly looked into the distance, following the Rain Emperor's gaze. A cloud was floating over from afar, but strangely, this cloud was pink, and its speed was extremely fast. However, when they got closer, they discovered that there was actually another person standing on top of the cloud. This was an old man in his 70s. He was tall and slender, had jet black hair, wore a long robe, and had the air of a celestial being. He was flying in the sky. When the others arrived, they couldn't help but look shocked. How could a mortal fly in the sky? Flower Blossom Tier. This old man was in the Flower Blossom Tier, which was why he could fly between heaven and earth with his physical body, transcending mortality. When the old man arrived in the sky, a boundless pressure circulated, causing everyone to feel tiny from the bottom of their hearts. They only wanted to kneel down and worship him. The old man's gaze swept over Feng Yan, and his expression immediately darkened. He said, "How dare you, daring to injure a disciple of my Winter Moon sect? Rain Emperor, give me an explanation." He stared at the Rain Emperor, looking down at him from above, his domineering aura completely on display. Flower Blossom Tier warriors indeed had the right to be so arrogant. Yet the Rain Emperor did not buy it at all. He raised his head menacingly, threw out a punch, and said, "In front of me, you still dare to act all high and mighty?" Hung, a golden fist descended from the sky, smashing towards the Flower Blossom Tier old man. Insolence! That old man was practically about to explode in anger. A mere spiritual pedestal tier warrior actually dared to attack him first. It was truly the biggest joke in the world. However, he didn't dare to let the fist strike him head-on. He could only raise his hand and push it toward the sky. A pink mist spread out, turning into millions of flying beasts that bit and pecked at the golden fist. The old man immediately cried out in surprise, because this golden fist was really domineering, actually shattering those flying beasts one by one and smashing them down with an unstoppable momentum. Pang! The old man was forced to throw out another palm to meet the golden fist, and his figure was instantly struck down, landing on the ground. The golden fist was finally shattered, but the old man also landed on the ground. Instead, the Rain Emperor sat high up on the top of the small mountain. In the first round of confrontation, the Rain Emperor had the upper hand. Everyone cried out in surprise. Today, shocking things really happened one after another. Wasn't the Rain Emperor in the spiritual pedestal tier? How could he suppress a Flower Blossom Tier warrior? The envoys of the 8 nations were even more terrified and uneasy. Could it be that a second Flower Blossom Tier warrior was about to appear in Rain Country? That Flower Blossom Tier old man stood proudly. It wasn't that he was no match for the Rain Emperor, but that he underestimated the Rain Emperor too much, causing him to be struck down. However, no matter how careless he was still in the Flower Blossom Tier, and those below the Flower Blossom Tier were all mortals. A casual strike from him could kill a spiritual pedestal tier warrior, so how could he be struck down? His name was Hezheng Chu, and he was sent by that spiritual infant tier elite of the Winter Moon sect to bring Feng Yan back to gain face. Thus, he planned to appear when Feng Yan won first place in the martial arts tournament, allowing Feng Yan, who stood at the peak of the younger generation, to reach a higher level. He never imagined that the Rain Emperor would actually announce another person as the champion of this martial arts tournament, causing him to come over in confusion, only to find that Feng Yan had one of his legs crippled. This naturally made him furious, but before he could even fly into a rage, he was struck down to the ground by a punch, causing him to be slightly dumbfounded. He Zhengqiu raised his head to look at the Rain Emperor with a slight frown, and said, "You're only half a step into the flower blossom tier, how could you possibly have such battle prowess? You don't need to know." The Rain Emperor was still domineering. He Zhengqiu was confused. He naturally knew that the fortune of a nation could increase one's power, but was it really that exaggerated? When he was young, it wasn't as if he hadn't trained in the 9 nations of the desolate north and battled with a few previous rulers. With the power of the nation on him, he could indeed increase his battle prowess, but it was only by a few stars, and definitely not as exaggerated as surpassing mortals. The Rain Emperor of this generation seemed to be a bit too strong. He Zhengqiu glanced at Feng Yan, and said, "This boy is the personal disciple of my sect's Grand Elder Shi, yet one of his legs was crippled here. I need an explanation." "What explanation?" The Rain Emperor humphed. "He was injured in a fair martial arts tournament, and everyone can see it. What explanation do I need to give you? You can take him and leave. If you want to take revenge, sure. Let him cultivate a bit more and reclaim his honor himself." He Zhengqiu considered for a moment, then said, "I want to take the culprit away." Being able to say such words, He Zhengqiu was giving the Rain Emperor enough face. A disciple of the Winter Moon sect was crippled in Rain Country, and right in front of the Rain Emperor, yet he didn't ask the Rain Emperor to bear responsibility. This was practically not the style of the Winter Moon sect. The Rain Emperor didn't give him any face at all, and said, "Is there something wrong with your ears? I said, this is a fair battle, and Feng Yan can reclaim his honor himself." He Zhengqiu couldn't help but be furious, and said, "Rain Emperor, are you not giving me face? In my territory, why should I give you face? Who do you think you are to dare threaten me?" The Rain Emperor said darkly, his imperial aura blazing, domineering beyond compare. Everyone felt their blood boil. He actually managed to train an elite of the flower blossom tier like a dog. The Rain Emperor was really too domineering. This kind of monarch was really admirable. Even if they were to sell their lives to him, they would still be willing. He Zhengqiu was so angry that his brows and beard were raised, and he said angrily, "How dare you, coming to Rain Country to have a new emperor?" He brazenly made his move. Chapter 279. Everyone was very excited. Though they had not personally experienced it, when they heard Ling Han say that he had been continuously pursued by Duan Zhengji these past few days, all of them were filled with anger. Now that they had successfully concocted the boiling blood pill, they could finally wave the flag of their counterattack. Ling Han left the city, and headed all the way south. However, he had only traveled for about 100 miles when Duan Zhengji appeared like a maggot in his bones. "Brat, where are you going this time?" Duan Zhengji smirked coldly. Previously, Ling Han had not used the instant movement talisman, but had instead taken the risk to compete with him in speed and escape into the city. What did this mean? Ling Han had already run out of instant movement talismans, or rather, he only had 1 or 2 left. He had to keep them to save his life. "However, I do have some admiration for you. You obviously don't have any means to save your life, yet you still dare to leave the city alone," he continued. He was trying to get information out of Ling Han, wanting to know if he still had any more instant movement talismans in his possession. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, "Who said that I left the city alone? Oh, could it be that you have invited an elite cultivator?" Duan Zhengji was slightly shocked. There was indeed no such idiot in this world. He clearly knew that he was being pursued by an elite of spiritual pedestal tier, and yet he still dared to leave the city to seek his own death. However, when he spread out his divine sense, he did not discover anyone lying in ambush in the vicinity. In truth, he had kept an eye on Ling Han for a very long time before revealing himself. Firstly, he had come out far enough, so Ling Han could not possibly escape back into the city. Secondly, he had confirmed that there was no elite cultivator following behind Ling Han to protect him. If he did not have complete confidence, how could he possibly reveal himself? Ling Han smiled slightly, and raised his right hand lightly. Xiao, Hunyo's figure appeared, and she immediately opened her small arms to hug him, looking very clingy. Duan Zhengji's mouth instantly gaped open, and his eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. How could this be possible? A living person had appeared out of thin air. Could it be that this little girl had used an instant teleportation talisman to appear? But was there such an instant teleportation talisman in this world that could actually appear at such an accurate location? Duan Zhengji suddenly had a bad premonition. When a person encountered something that was beyond their understanding, they would definitely feel a sense of helplessness. "Nyo, beat him up," Ling Han said with a smile. "N," Hunyo answered in a crisp voice. Her small figure darted out, and Xiao, like a flash of lightning, she instantly appeared behind Duan Zhengji. She raised her small fist and aimed it at the back of Duan Zhengji's head. Her speed was really fast, so fast that Duan Zhengji did not even have time to dodge or parry. He could only use his origin power to protect the top of his head, and his martial intent circulated to form a protective barrier. Using the power of the spiritual ocean tier to clash head-on against an opponent of the spiritual pedestal tier, the only result would be that Hunyo's fist would be shattered. But was Hunyo really that easy to deal with? Her small fist inconceivably bent and smashed downwards. Peng! It hit Duan Zhengji right in the middle of his back. This punch caused Duan Zhengji to stagger, and he almost fell onto the ground. Hunyo's attack succeeded, and she immediately displayed her beast-like attacking style. Peng, 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 her small fists swung continuously attacking Duan Zhengji's weak points. Duan Zhengji was dumbstruck, and could only spread out his origin power to protect his whole body. It was as if he had become a porcupine, and there was absolutely no place for him to attack. Only then did Hunyo have no choice but to stop. With a xiao, she leaped back to Ling Han's side, and once again stuck to his body, acting coquettishly. The current Hunyo was completely harmless, and looked more like an exquisite and beautiful little princess. Who would have thought that her attack just now would be so wild and sharp? A strong sense of fear suddenly rose up in Duan Zhengji, because protecting his whole body with origin power like this was very exhausting. At most, he would only need about an hour or so before he would be completely exhausted. And Hunyo only had to wait until he appeared to be lacking in origin power to attack, and then the consequences would be unthinkable. Thankfully, he still had a powerful weapon. Duan Zhengji drew out a replica of the demonic noise saber. This was a level 5 spirit tool, and furthermore, it was an omnidirectional sound wave attack. Hunyo's cultivation level of the spiritual ocean tier was a great weakness, and with the demonic noise penetrating her brain, she could only be at his mercy. "Heng, the two of you are indeed a bit strange, but in front of absolute power, the two of you can only die," he said coldly. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "You have no idea how pathetic you looked just now." "Ugly guy," Hunyo said very proudly. "How dare you?" Duan Zhengji waved the demonic noise saber, and immediately, a sound wave attack surged out, sweeping towards Ling Han and Hunyo. "Big brother Guang, it's time for you to make your appearance." Ling Han waved his hand, and Guang Yuan's figure instantly appeared. This guy clenched his fist, and hung, for flashes of fist chi shot out, forming a total of 5 silver-colored dragons and elephants that charged towards the demonic noise. Peng, 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 peng. The 5 dragons and elephants were shattered at the first instant, but the demonic noise did not disappear. It cut a great deal of wounds on Guang Yuan's body, and only then did it finally disappear. As expected of a level 10 spirit tool replica, it was far more powerful than a normal level 5 spirit tool. Yet Duan Zhengji's face was filled with shock, and he said, "You've actually broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier." "No, how could you possibly appear here all of a sudden?" If one person used an instant movement talisman to appear here, it could still be said to be a coincidence, but how could such a thing happen for two people? Moreover, was the instant movement talisman really so wasteful? He suddenly came to a realization and said, a spatial spirit tool that can contain living beings. Brat, you have a precious treasure on you. He revealed a fanatical expression. This was too shocking, because it was equivalent to bringing along a large army with him. Just imagine, if one person snuck into some great force, released a great number of elites from the spatial spirit tool, and then launched a surprise attack, how shocking would the results of the battle be? Especially for the Thousand Corpse sect. What this force needed the most was a place to hide and develop in secret. If one could obtain such a divine item, then who else in this world would be able to find the location of the Thousand Corpse sect? Ha 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 ha, even the heavens are helping me. He laughed loudly. If he could bring back this divine item, then there would naturally not be a need to mention the fault of the branch in Sea Breeze City being destroyed. He would be rewarded generously, and it would not be impossible for him to be directly conferred the title of Vice Sect Master. You dream too much. Ling Han naturally knew what the other party was thinking. He shook his head, and said, Big Brother Guang, kill him. All right. Guang Yuan spread his hands, and swallowed a vermilion-red alchemical pill. It was naturally the boiling blood pill. Ha, so what if you have broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier? You have only just broken through, and you are only in the first layer of cultivation, while I am in the third layer. Furthermore, with the demonic noise saber in hand, killing you is as easy as killing a chicken, Duan Zhengji said disdainfully. He did not want to drag things out, so he immediately took the initiative to attack. With a flying saber strike, the demonic noise saber was extravagant, capable of piercing through one's brain and splitting one's heart. Guang Yuan also let out a furious roar. Hong, a terrifying aura surged out from his body, and actually formed multiple whirlwinds around him, with martial intent flickering within them. Peng, he shot out another punch. It was the same 4 flashes of fist chi, which also turned into 5 dragon elephants. However, these 5 dragon elephants were at least 10 times larger than the 5 dragon elephants from before. Each dragon elephant was at least 30 meters tall, and was shining with a silver light. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.